The anime kicks off with the end of an epic game that lasted a whole 3 years. But for our protagonist, that was just the tutorial. This guy is a hardcore gamer from Japan who was seriously upset with the ending, thinking everything went by way too fast. To him, the game was total garbage, and now he wants a real challenge, something that would take about 10 years to beat. Because yes, my friends, the only thing he does in life, besides clocking in at work, is play games. Even though he's disappointed, he doesn't waste any time and immediately Googles for a hardcore game with totally broken balance. As soon as he hits enter, the screen lights up with a mysterious world, and an unknown company offers him an endless game in a fantasy world, complete with swords and magic. His hype goes through the roof right away. He goes to check the difficulty settings and sees the basics: easy, normal, and a bizarre option called Hell Mode. The description already warns that regret will be the least of your worries, because what awaits the player is pure, concentrated despair. In Hell Mode, to level up, you need 100 times more XP than on normal. But our guy has heard this story 1,000 times. He wasn't intimidated and went straight for that option. After that, he sees there's a huge list of classes: Swordsman, Lancer, Swordmaster, Hero, and even Demon King. But for some reason, the Summoner class has a way more insane difficulty than the others, and that triggered his curiosity mode. He notices that the game is still in alpha and doesn't even know how he unlocked that option, but decides not to overthink it, and just figures it'll be a fun challenge. He clicks start, accepting to be the guinea pig for this server, and out of nowhere the guy disappears from his room, leaving nothing but empty space behind. The next thing he feels is a pleasant warmth, something so relaxing he could live there, even though he has no idea where he is. But the vibe changes quickly, the place starts to get tight, the air disappears, and he feels like he's being squeezed. Shortly after, he spawns into this new world as a newborn baby. And that's when it hits him what the game meant by reincarnation. His father holds the little one with all the joy in the world and announces that the name has already been chosen. The kid is going to be called Howlin. Our protagonist accepts the name and the new account without any fuss, since his previous life was a total flop. He was a 35-year-old guy, no degree, no money, zero in romance, and just an ordinary salaryman. Getting reset as this little 1-year-old Alan doesn't seem like a bad deal. He still can't talk, but his processor's running at full speed, and he understands everything. Luckily, it seems like Japanese is the default language in this world. He was born into a family of farmers, just like he chose at the start, and they live in a border village where people pay taxes to a local lord so they can farm. So he doesn't have a last name yet. His father's name is Rodin, a family man who works hard in the fields every day. His mother is Teresia, a real beauty and super sweet. As was the custom back then, both of them are barely in their 20s. For now, he's an only child, but since his parents are young and totally in love, he knows it won't be long before the family's server gets more players. Suddenly, sleep hits him hard. Teresia puts the little one to bed and goes to have dinner with Rodin. As soon as he's alone, Alan decides it's time to try opening the stats menu. Unfortunately, nothing happens, which leaves him pretty frustrated, because living the baby life is fun, but his build is a summoner, and he wants to test his power already. He's already lost count of how many times he's tried to open the menu and was almost about to give up on the idea. But then he decided to try just one more time with a let's see what happens attitude. And wouldn't you know it, it worked. A light appears above him and a book pops up out of nowhere. He wasn't expecting that and lets out a scream that's half shock and half pure hype. The noise puts his parents on high alert and they rush into the room to make sure the baby's okay. Alan realizes he can't let anyone see the legendary item, makes the book disappear in the blink of an eye, and pretends to be fast asleep. The parents are totally confused, thinking it was just a false alarm. Once they leave, Alan sits up in bed and summons the book again. After a year of trying, the menu finally opened. The book shows all his current stats. He's at level 1, and his class is Summoner, just like he wanted. One of the pages explains the details of his skill, and he finds out that both summoning and creating have their own skill XP bars. Apparently, it works like this. The more he uses the skills, the more they level up. The problem? Right now, his XP is absolutely 0. Even so, the crafting menu is already unlocked, and he can create some summons. But for now, the build is limited to insects and beasts. Alan notices that he can only summon rank H creatures, which he already figures is rock bottom, the base of the pyramid, the trash tier of the game. Out of nowhere, the book flips the page and a personalized message pops up, thanking him for playing and asking if he's enjoying the new world. In the text, the god of creation himself, someone called MEA, apologizes for the lag in delivering the grimoire. Alan just accepts that he got an email from the admin. MEA, explains that since he chose a class that's still in the testing phase, the famous alpha, the paperwork took a while to come through, but the team worked hard to deliver it as soon as possible. And check out the admin's warning. We don't accept questions or cancellations about the chosen class. In other words, you picked it, now deal with it. Alan knows that being a summoner is going to have its bugs, but he wants to see things get wild, so he tries to summon an insect. At first, nothing happens. He tries everything he can think of, strikes a pose, strains himself, but nothing works, and he's already starting to get tilted. Since there's no tutorial or wiki in this world, he realizes he's gonna have to figure everything out by trial and error. He thinks, wait, first I have to use the clear skill. And sure enough, a card shines in front of him. His first summon is an H-rank insect with +1 resistance and +1 agility. Is it basic? Yeah, but for our guy, it felt like he just dropped a legendary item. He's all excited to materialize the creature, but his mom comes into the room to check if her baby's okay. Alan, already a master of disguise, pretends to be asleep again to keep a secret and saves the test for the next morning. The next day, as soon as Theresia leaves him alone for his nap, he doesn't waste any time. The card disintegrates into particles of light and turns into a giant grasshopper that jumps right onto his face. He gets startled, but quickly tries to see if the creature's obedient. He tells the insect to come closer, but the thing completely ignores him and just walks around the room. Alan's already thinking, great, I summoned a dumb creature. He goes back to the grimoire to see if there's an instruction manual and discovers that he can give the creature a name. The name he chooses? Denka. He also notices a section called Buff and realizes the magic. Those extra status points from Denka are being added to Alan's own attributes. He gets so hyped that he lets out a shout at joy, and Theresia pops into the room in the blink of an eye. When she sees that giant bug in front of her son, she totally panics and bam, stomps on Denka without mercy, sending the poor thing straight to insect heaven. A soul that never hurt anyone just bit the dust. Press F in the chat for Denka. After a few days grinding skills, Alan finally manages to create an H-rank beast, a rat named Mouse. He's just as goofy as Denka, but at least he follows commands. Alan realizes this world is full of overpowered monsters and there's no way he'll survive with just 2 low-level critters. Oh, and by the way, Denka survived. I cried for nothing, guys, he's alive. He finds out he can store up to 10 cards of each creature, and the best part is the buffs stack up. With 10 mouse cards, his attack goes up by 10 points. Now the kid's already stronger than any normal baby, he's basically a mini Hulk. But Hell Mode doesn't mess around. The XP needed to level up a skill is 100 times higher than normal, so the grind is going to be endless. Before he can keep farming, his dad, Rodin, gets home after a long day of hard work. Theresia almost has a fit when she sees her husband covered in blood, but Rodin calms her down by explaining it's just hunting blood. He proudly tells Alan that today he took down a wild boar all by himself. Alan knows his dad is a servant, but in the fall and winter, he becomes a monster hunter with his buddies from the village. Rodin says the boar was a giant monster and asks his son if he wants to see it. Alan gets super excited since it's going to be the first time he sees a real mob from this world. After saying goodbye to Theresia, Rodin puts the kid on his shoulders and says, "Hey, the neighbors are already over there slicing up the beast, let's go check it out." On the way, Alan finally gets a good look at the map of the outside world, since up until now he was just stuck at the spawn point inside the house. His dad points to a flock of birds in the sky called albigirons. Birds that fly north together to signal that autumn has arrived. Seeing these monsters flying, Rodin opens up and confesses that he named his son Alan as a tribute to these creatures. He explains that for them, the sky's the limit, and having wings to fly wherever you want is the very definition of total freedom. Rodin thought this idea was super poetic, but Theresia almost took his head off when she found out their son's name was a tribute to a monster. That's what happens when you try to be too cool, right? Alan ends up falling asleep along the way, and when he wakes up, he comes face to face with the forest where his father defeated the great boar. Up close, the beast is a nightmare, and Alan immediately realizes that at his current level, he wouldn't be able to withstand that creature for even a second. Then a guy named Gerdo shows up, the ultimate party starter, announcing to everyone that the heavyweight champion has arrived. Everyone applauds Rodin, who gives a humble response, saying it was just luck. Gerdo notices Alan, and the kid, being super polite, greets him and introduces himself right away. Gerdo is shocked because Alan's only 1 year old and already more civilized than a lot of adults. He even mentions that his own daughter's the same age, but she's pure chaos compared to Alan. Our protagonist takes the opportunity to ask if the boar is strong and finds out that the creature is rank C. In the real world, it would take about 20 men to take one of those down. Alan mentally notes down this info to get a sense of the power scale. 10 months later, Alan is almost 2 years old, and the grind finally paid off. He reached level 2 in summoning and crafting. With that, he unlocked the expansion ability and the notes function in the grimoire. The adrenaline kicks in, because now he can create rank G cards. He gets a fusion skill, and his inventory doubles in size, which means double the buffs. He tries to fuse 2 beasts right away, but where's the MP? The kid decides to chow down to recover his energy and runs to his room to test it out. He tries to fuse 2 mice, but the grimoire tells him he's still low on mana, even with a full stomach. He tries to create a rank G creature from scratch and nothing happens. His max MP is still way too low for the cost of these new abilities. The only thing to do is wait. When he turns 3, his account is already more built up. He already has Beast, Insect, and even Bird cards, all rank G. He finally does the fusion and gets a bird called Chop. The creature lands on his shoulder, and Alan discovers its special skill is voice mimicry. Shape repeats everything he says in an identical voice. Alan's already thinking, I can totally mess with enemies using this. Then he summons Hopper, a frog, and Molly, a mole. Hopper shines to provoke enemies, the classic taunt, and Molly digs gigantic holes in seconds, perfect for making pitfall traps. Alan is loving this complexity. It's exactly the hardcore game he asked the gods for. But the fun doesn't last long when someone falls into one of Molly's holes. Alan remembers that it'll still be a while before he gets to fight real monsters, because the final boss of his life has arrived. The bell rings 3 o'clock, and he already knows who's coming to pick him up. Krenna, Gerdo's daughter. She shows up full of energy, inviting him to play Dueling Knights. With no way to escape socializing, he climbs out of the hole and goes to greet Krenna, accepting his fate as the neighbor's plaything. The little girl immediately points a wooden sword at his chest. And Alan, even though he thinks it's the height of embarrassment, accepts the fair duel. But there's nothing fair about it, because Krenna is the definition of overpowered. The girl is way too fast and doesn't have an ounce of mercy when it comes to a one-on-one fight. Alan put all his buffs into agility, and even so, the poor guy can barely see the girl's movements. She's so broken that she even breaks her own wooden sword from hitting so much, and keeps the combo going on him. At the end of the day, his parents show up to save him, but the damage is already done. Meanwhile, Theresia has a new player in her inventory, waiting for the other baby. When Krenna leaves, Alan gets up all beat up, but since he's a good son, he decides to help his mom carry the vegetables. Theresia gives a big smile, and at dinner, Alan tells his dad straight up, "Dad, I want to help with the potato harvest so Mom can get some rest." Both of them are shocked, but Alan tries to convince them by saying he's strong enough. And the crazy thing is, it's true. The kid already has the physique of a jacked adult thanks to the buffs, but he keeps that secret locked up tight. Theresia says that kids should be kids, and that he should keep playing with Krenna. Roden agrees, saying that Alan already helps out a lot at home, and that his time to work hard in the fields will come soon enough. That's when Alan drops the heavy lore. They're servants and will always be servants. And working in the fields is such a hellish grind that his dad doesn't even wish it on his 3-year-old son. Then Theresia says, "I saw you've been practicing throwing rocks at the tree out back." Roden asks why, and Alan comes up with a heroic excuse. "Since you said there are monsters out there, I'm gonna protect Mom by throwing rocks at them." Roden bursts out laughing and praises the little hero's courage. But in reality, Alan was just trying to see if he could learn some kind of physical attack skill that wasn't summoning. His mom asks if he's going to protect Krenna too, and he says yes, but deep down he's thinking, that girl is a monster, she's the one who should protect me. His dad comments that he can't wait for the evaluation ceremony. Alan is like, what kind of DLC is this? His mom explains that at 5 years old, it's a divine event to see each person's talent. Roden adds that if he gets a rare class, he can finally get out of this life of servitude. Winter arrives, and Alan goes to visit Denka. Yes, the immortal grasshopper. The little guy jumped in the same spot for so long that he dug a hole in the ground. Alan realizes that now he can keep his summons active for a whole day, which is a huge improvement in mana management. Suddenly, he hears Krenna's battle cry, hides his grimoire, and accepts his fate of becoming a punching bag again. This time, he tries to block her attacks, but the girl wipes the floor with him. Nothing new on that front. When Rodin gets back from work, Teresa goes to greet him, but Denka decides to jump on her leg. She gets startled, falls to the floor, and in the middle of the panic, the contractions start. The baby decided it was time to spawn. At Rodin's request, Krina runs to get her mom, while the men in the house are left more lost than a blind man in a shootout. Alan even thinks, man, I should have played some childbirth simulator in my past life. His dad is just as desperate. Luckily, Matilda, Krina's mom, bursts in, kicks the useless guys out of the room, and takes charge with the other women. The two of them are left outside and have to sleep there. At dawn, the new member of the guild is born. It's a boy. Rodin, who already had the name ready, announces all proud he'll be called Mesh. Theresia likes it, but already gives a warning. I hope it's not another monster name. Rodin just gives that little laugh as someone who did it again, because yes, Mesh is also the name of a mob. And in the middle of all this family chaos, Alan just lies there staring at the ceiling, asking himself, man, Mia, why the heck did I reincarnate again? Alan knows the main focus is grinding to maximize levels, but he's only human. This family life is also a pretty nice comfort game. He still doesn't have a step-by-step plan for how he's gonna do it, but one thing's for sure, he's gonna get his whole family out of this exhausting fate of servitude, even if he has to solo the entire map to do it. Sometime later. And when Alan finally levels up to 5, his dad, Rodin, decides to take the kid out for a walk in a giant flower field and start spilling the beans about this so-called evaluation ceremony. According to him, it's a mandatory event, kind of like a game tutorial, where every child in the village has to participate as soon as they turn 5. If they find out the kid has any talent, it's a golden opportunity for him and his family to escape the life of servants and move up the social ladder. But Rodin is straight with Alan. It's not going to be easy because the competition is insane and the village is full of people after the same drop. On the way, they run into Krina and her father, and the 4 of them decide to form a party and travel together to a neighboring village of commoners. When they arrive at the commoners' village, Alan is left speechless. He thought all commoners were down on their luck, but the people there are decked out in clothes way better than his, looking like they spent cash on their skins. Shortly after, the evaluation ceremony is ready to begin. The priests slowly open the main door, building up the suspense, and ask everyone to show respect to Almea, the god of creation and the server admin. Then they lay it out straight. The kingdom's heroes aren't just born with a silver spoon and high status, they can also come from humble servants. Alan hears this and immediately gets it, because he read in the game's epilogue that overpowered classes like Hero and Swordmaster have to start from the bottom, in the lowest social class. At first, he thought it was just some made-up game lore, but now he realizes that this rule applies to the whole world. Because of that, everyone, no matter their status, has to take part in this real-life gacha. Once the explanation's over, the commoners start entering the building, totally calm. Inside, Alan sees a statue in the center and assumes it must be the god worshipped in this world, the so-called MA. It doesn't take long for the ceremony to start with the village chief and his son, Palomas. The kid steps forward, puts his hand on the crystal ball, and the screen lights up, announcing that he has the talent to be a merchant. His father almost bursts with joy and runs to hug his son, relieved to know the boy isn't just some useless NPC. Meanwhile, Alan is stunned when his grimoire starts floating and begins writing a bunch of numbers on its pages. He realizes that now his attributes show up as clear values, like an RPG HUD, instead of hidden numbers. And best of all, only he can see the grimoire, which means he can use the system in stealth mode without anyone noticing. The ceremony goes on and the kids are there celebrating with their parents after unlocking new abilities. But unfortunately, RNG isn't good for everyone, and some don't get any talent at all, ending up really down. Next up is Dagora, who puts his hand on the crystal and makes it light up. The priest announces that his talent is Axe Wielder. Dagora jumps for joy and runs to his dad to celebrate his new build. One by one, everyone gets their verdict and leaves, until only Alan and Krenna are left with their parents. Krenna runs up to the crystal ball, eager to see what she'll get. The moment she touches it, an insane light bursts out of the crystal. Even the priests are shocked by the result. Most of her stats are almost at the max cap, which reveals that she has the talent of a master swordsman, one of the rarest and most overpowered classes in the game. Her dad is ecstatic, convinced that his daughter is going to lift the family out of poverty. But Karina isn't even happy because she just wanted to be a regular swordsman. Alan isn't surprised at all because he always knew she had insane potential. He's hyped up too, hoping his parents will find out that he's a summoner. He walks up to the crystal full of confidence to reveal his class. He puts his hand on it and boom, a blinding light explodes and throws him through the air before he crashes to the ground. Rotem runs desperately to a priest, asking if his son awakened a unique talent, but the answer is a cold shower. The priest announces that Alan doesn't have any talent at all. Zero. Nothing. Surprisingly, Rotem doesn't get mad at all. He calmly picks Alan up and says it's time to head back home. They go back home, where Theresia and Alan's little brother, Mash, are already waiting to give him a warm welcome. Later that night, Rotem sits down with Alan and tells him not to feel down about not having any talent, explaining that it doesn't change the fact that they love him very much. Even so, Alan is still a bit disappointed that he didn't get a skill of his own. But deep down, he is grateful to have been born into such a good-hearted family. That same night, our protagonist stays up in bed with a grimoire open. Reviewing his stats, he notices that all his attributes are listed as rank E. At least today helped him realize something important. He's the only person in this world playing on Hell mode. Alan assumes that the ranking system reflects the growth a person can expect as they level up. That's why he believes his skills are rank E, because he chose the insane difficulty, which probably reduces progress by about 100 times compared to normal. This means that the numbers in the grimoire are just a fraction of his true potential. Alan realizes that this is the difficulty where most people would quit the game, but not him. This is his mission, to prove that he can tank and beat any hard game that comes his way. The next day, Alan and his family go to Karina's house to celebrate her overpowered talent as a master swordsman. On the way, Alan notices that his dad looks pretty grumpy, but it's clear he doesn't want to talk about it. That bad mood sticks with Rotem all the way to Karina's house. When everyone starts drinking, Rotem and Gerda start arguing over the smallest things. Alan watches the argument and wonders if his dad is jealous because Karina became a master swordsman, but he quickly dismisses the idea, knowing his dad isn't petty like that. The argument keeps escalating, with the two of them yelling at each other. Suddenly, Gerda drops a bombshell. He reveals that Rotem once said he wanted to cut ties with his family. Everyone is left in shock. Rotem admits it's true, but explains that it's not because he wants to. He says Karina's talent is 1 in a million and could put her on the path to becoming a noble. That's why he firmly believes she shouldn't risk her future by spending her time associating with servants like them. Even after that dramatic explanation, the two keep arguing until their wives go into rage mode and deliver a sharp slap to snap him back to reality. Matilda and Teresa explain the truth. The four of them are childhood friends who grew up together in the same village. Apparently, Gerda and Rotem have always been two stubborn guys looking for an excuse to fight. Remember, in the past calms everyone down, and they spend the rest of the night drinking and laughing. The next day, word spreads quickly about Karina's talent, and soon the Order of Knights starts planning a visit to see the legend in person. Shortly after, the knights arrive in the village, riding their horses. As soon as they arrive, Karina and her father rush over to the commander to introduce themselves. While they're talking, Alan watches from a distance, wondering if this means Karina will have to leave the village and become a noble. He understands that it's her destiny, but admits he'll really miss her when that day comes. After the commander talks to Gerda, a tense commotion breaks out. He claims that they might have lied about Karina's talent, so he declares that she has to prove herself in a duel against the vice captain. If she fails, she's done for right then and there, because lying about talent is punishable by death. She'd be gone in an instant. Gerda refuses immediately, unable to accept that an experienced grown man like the vice captain would fight a 5-year-old girl. Alan agrees, but he knows there's nothing he can do. Karina looks at the dual sword, thinks it's beautiful and shiny, and just because of that, she already accepts the one-on-one right away, telling her dad not to worry. Gerda is left speechless. The duel between Karina and Vice Captain Leibrand begins. At first, it seems balanced, but Leibrand quickly uses his ridiculous strength to pin Karina against the wall. Gerda tries to intervene, but is held back by the knights. The commander already thinks it's over, but to everyone's surprise, Krina gets up surrounded by a blue aura. She charges at Leybrand and unleashes a flurry of blows 10 times faster and stronger. The guy can't handle it and his sword is split in half. The commander immediately ends the duel. The vice captain is in shock, unable to understand how, as a 24-year-old adult, he was humiliated by a 5-year-old child. The crowd goes wild, celebrating Krina, now convinced that she is the true swordmaster. Gerda feels an overwhelming pride seeing his daughter achieve the impossible. Shortly after, the commander comes up to Gerda and says he has no more doubts at all. He wants to talk about her future. They go to the village chief's house, where the conversation happens over dinner. The commander introduces himself as Zenov and explains that he was sent by the lord of the region to confirm the existence of the swordmaster. After seeing the duel, it's absolutely confirmed. Then, Zenovan announces another decision from the lord. The village, which was going to be named after the chief, will now be called Krena Village to honor the girl. After that, Zenov apologizes to Gerda for the harsh test. Gerda, who doesn't hold a grudge, accepts it without any hard feelings. Zenov says to keep raising Krena like normal until she turns 12, when she'll be sent to the Royal Academy to master her talent. Alan gets super excited, imagining an academy full of people with stolen talents. But then he notices that Dagora, the boy with the axe, is there too. Zenov recognizes Dagora and tells him to train hard so he can get into the academy one day. With that settled, Zenov looks at Alan and notices something strange: black hair and black eyes. When he finds out that Alan is the son of Rodin, the boar hunter, Zenov immediately stands up as a sign of respect. He explains that Rodin is a legend in the village, the guy who used to solo the dangerous hunting missions. He's considered a true hero. Alan listens to all this with pride, realizing that his dad really is a badass. Later on, Gerda and Rodin say their goodbyes. Rodin believes that Krena is going to be a heroine, but he's even more impressed that she was recognized by the Lord. He tells Alan to keep working hard, saying that his son is destined for great things. After all, he's his son. At that moment, Alan pulls out some fruit he borrowed from the cafeteria, and Rodin does the same, and the two of them burst out laughing together. And to top off another epic day, we see our protagonist grinning from ear to ear, because all that grinding finally paid off, and he leveled up his summoning skill. He opens up that awesome grimoire and comes across a new passive skill, Empowerment. Now the kid can give his summons a serious boost to make them beasts. And on top of that, he even unlocked rank F. He immediately starts daydreaming. What if I do a synthesis right now? Could I score an overpowered dragon? With all this new gear in his inventory, he puts it on his to-do list to run some tests later. That same night, there's a family dinner, and we find out that Mrs. Theresia has a new player on the server. She's expecting a baby. When Alan goes to help clear the dishes, his mom feels the baby kicking. It's that sweet moment when they start talking about what the baby's name will be if it's a girl. Right at that moment, the system pings in the protagonist's ear, letting him know his MP is maxed out, fully charged. Automatically, he ends up reading the creator's name that pops up on the screen, Elmia. His parents hear it and immediately assume that's the name he picked for his little sister. They're startled and gently scold him, telling him not to use the name of a deity like that in vain. His mom, worried, asks what's going on, because he's been kind of on edge lately. Alan, the master of dodging questions, changes the subject to his dad and asks about his arm, surprised that there isn't any battle scar. Rodin tells it like it is and says that happened because he went through a trial from the gods while he was out hunting boar that day. In normal people terms, the guy explained that he felt a sudden buff of energy that wiped out all his wounds and fatigue. Hearing that, Alan immediately realizes that the old man leveled up. He admits that his dad is a really strong veteran and that he doesn't even need to check the status sheet to confirm the obvious. But then, that wave of sadness hits. He mentions that the only way for him to earn XP is by taking down some monsters with his fists. The problem is, since they're servants, they can't leave the village without permission unless it's to go hunting. With that in mind, he says, "Man, I really wish I could tag along on a hunt with you guys." His dad hits him with a no so blunt it almost hurts, making it clear that this is serious business and not some kid's game. After that cold shower, Alan is going to throw himself into things, focusing on his mission to get stronger. Later on, he checks the developer's log, where they mention they fixed that bug in the text and even sent an attachment with the raw data, the character's unprocessed stats. That's when he finds out he has an S rank in intelligence and the same level of potential as Karina. That gives our hero's ego a nice little boost. Now, without wasting any time, he's going to use the upgrade on good old Denka. After the process, he summons the creature to see the results live and notices its skin has changed a bit. He's all excited about the creature, but then his mom walks into the room and, without any mercy, finishes off poor Denka with a stomp. He's done for. The next day, Rodan says goodbye to go grind on the hunt, and the protagonist is left there thinking about what to do. After hanging up the laundry, he starts trying to combine different creatures, but everything just fails. Then he has a genius idea. What if he mixes an insect with a bird? The result is a new card, grass type, rank F. He's kind of mad about the result, but when he checks the stats, he sees it comes with an MP regeneration item, which will let him span the skill for way longer. Even though he's optimistic, knowing it might take decades to really level up, he decides to summon it. Then a little apple with roots and tiny legs appears, the peak of creativity. He names the creature Apple. With the creature on the field, he sees that it has the skill Aroma. Not understanding anything, he tells it to use the skill. Apple buries itself in the ground and sprouts a little branch. Alan goes to smell it and gets that essential oil spa scent. He even falls backward in disappointment, asking if he's turned into a damn gardener now. At that moment, his mom arrives, thanks him for helping with the laundry, and Alan tries to send Apple back into the card, but the creature just ignores him and doesn't obey. His mom notices the little sprout in the ground, thinks it's a bit weird, but the smell is so good she doesn't even question it. Later, our protagonist goes to his usual training with Karina and, as always, gets his butt kicked. But the redhead notices that he's been holding up better lately. This surprises the protagonist. He checks his stats and realizes that both his sword skill and endurance have leveled up. He wonders if that scent from Apple had some passive effect in battle, or maybe boosted some hidden attribute. Then he remembers that Fido, his wolf summon, has the bite skill. He's itching to try it out on someone, but he knows it could go badly. He sneaks a sideways glance at Karina, and she notices, asking if something's wrong. Alan quickly brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Later in the afternoon, we see the protagonist training his arm by throwing rocks at a tree trunk. Next to him is Mosh, his younger brother, who's already totally bored and asking to go home. Alan asks him to hang in there a bit longer, mentioning that his quest list just keeps getting longer. The drama doesn't stop. Alan is stuck in that classic hero's dilemma: help his pregnant mom and take care of his little sister, or keep grinding his rock throwing skill. He even thinks about quitting training, but his gamer instincts win out because he feels like a level up is coming. Just as he's about to throw another rock, Mosh asks about the plants on the wall, and we see that Apple has set up a little garden there over time. But the mood gets heavy when night falls, and his dad, Rodan, doesn't show up. Teresa tries to stay calm, but out of nowhere, people start yelling outside, calling for Rodan. They run out to see what's going on, and it's a shocking scene. Rodan is in bad shape, being carried by the group. Once they're inside, Gilda drops the ball. A wild boar gored Rodan through the stomach with its tusk. The wound was cauterized right away, and Gilda explains that the only reason he's still alive is because they used an expensive healing herb, bought with the gold the knights gave them to make up for the mess with Karina. One of the guys starts blaming the commoners for the whole mess, and everyone gets riled up, demanding answers. In the middle of all the chaos, Mash wakes up, sees his dad in that condition, and bursts into tears. Alan takes his brother away to calm the little one down, and everyone decides to leave the family alone. Taking advantage of the quiet, Alan goes to question Gilda to understand why they're blaming the commoners. Gilda explains that the village chief called everyone together and ordered the commoners to join the boar hunt. The reason? The meat from the animal's worth a lot. The Baron keeps most of it, but the leftovers are what the hunters live on, and they use it as currency for trade. But the commoners never joined in because the risk was just too high. Turns out, there was a rumor going around that there was a hero among the servants. Alan thought it was Karina, but Joda reveals that the name of the legend is Rodan. The captain called the guy a legend, and that basically became an official seal of safety. Everyone thought that with Rodan in the group, nobody would get taken out. But when push came to shove, The commoners chickened out. On the day of the hunt, they were given the easiest task: distract the boar. They failed miserably, and Rodan ended up being the tank who took the critical hit. Luckily, they managed to take down the beast, and Gilda promises to bring their share of the meat the next day, telling Alan to stay strong. The next day, the protagonist and his mother take care of Rodan's wounds. When he finally wakes up and opens his eyes, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Seeing the family together makes Alan feel that pang of guilt. He realizes that he was treating his new life like an RPG simulator, while everyone else was fighting for real survival. Gilda shows up with the meat, and Rodan still apologizes for being a burden. That's when Alan flips the switch. He promises that he'll protect his family no matter what, and he immediately starts showing off his new physique. When he goes to fetch water from the well, the adults warn him that the bucket is heavy, but the kid lifts it effortlessly, leaving everyone stunned. Back at home, he decides he's going to invest all his upgrade points into raw physical strength. Later, he goes to harvest potatoes with Gilda and pulls the plants out of the ground so easily that it freaks people out. At the end of the job, Alan complains about the low pay and finally experiences firsthand how unfair and harsh the servant system is. Later, the village chief shows up with one of the servants who brought fruit as an apology. The guy really feels bad about what he did. Rodan, who has a heart of gold, forgives him, but Teresia isn't so easy and reminds him that his mistake almost sent her husband to the grave. The other servants also show up with gifts and good vibes. Alan gets all emotional, thinking he really lucked out with the parents he has. After that, he goes off to a spot to train, summons the frogs, and sets up some traps, but nothing shows up. When he was just about to log off for the day, a gigantic bird appears, an albiran, a rank B creature that starts wiping out his summons without mercy. Alan tries to run away, but the system forces him to fight. He tries to stun the bird with a rock and attacks, but it doesn't even tickle it. He summons the wolves to see if they can hold the aggro, but nothing works. The bird knocks the protagonist down, and he feels his strength slipping away. With each summon getting obliterated, he collapses on the ground, out of energy, just trying not to become bird food. Continuing with what happened, Alan is there one-on-one against the giant albaheron, and by some miracle of dodging, he doesn't get turned into mush. Then he decides it's time to play his trump card, the SHUs. For those who don't know, there's some weird bugs that latch onto the giant bird and start draining its energy like a sketchy phone charger. The creature starts losing steam, and Alan, who's no fool, sends in even more SHUs to make sure the monster is left completely wrecked. He knows that, since he's nerfed after losing the blessings of the summons, the only way to solo this big bird is to make it weaker than Wi-Fi signal on a rainy day. So it's a downpour of machus and non-stop SHUs, my friend. After landing that critical sword strike with style, Albaheron finally goes down. Alan defeats his first boss and bags that sweet 100 XP for his account. The kid is totally hyped, feeling like all the grinding was worth it. After a while, he drags the creature's body home and his family is completely stunned. Karina comes in right away saying, "Damn, you're a beast," while Machis is off in a corner bawling his eyes out from fear. Poor kid. Loden, all worried, asks if Alan is okay, and the little prodigy just goes, "Relax, Dad, I'm killing it." Gelda looks at the creature and can't believe Alan soloed this boss with just a wooden sword and some rocks. But then he notices some bite marks on the monster and asks if Alan took it down by biting it too. Alan flashes that guilty smile and says he got a little carried away, leaving Gelda stunned. The guy stands up and tells Loden he'll take care of the loot and bleed the monster. At that moment, Alan notices that Gelda has a huge bump on his forehead and immediately figures Karina must have hit him with a special combo. Gelda calls Alan over for a straight talk and explains that after bleeding it, the beast yields about 20 kilos of meat, but only half of that can be handled at dinner. The rest, like the wings, can be traded for some cash. But then comes the part that kills the vibe. 60% of that loot has to go straight into the village chief's inventory. Man, just look at this chief's life. The guy just chills there, sipping grape juice in a hammock while people bring food right to his door just because of his position. At this rate, even I want to become the village DM. Alan gets confused and asks if the tax also applies to monsters from the jungle. Gelda confirms that the loot dictatorship is real, except for E-rank monsters, like those horned rabbits that aren't worth anything. Gelda pulls out the mana stone from the creature and lays it out. If it's D rank or higher, the chief confiscates everything because they say commoners wouldn't even know how to use an item of that level. But there's a catch. The kid had to go into combat because his dad's HP is in the red and he's all messed up, so Gelda suggests they try to make a deal with the chief. Alan likes the idea and whispers something in Gelda's ear that we don't get to hear yet. Pure anime mystery. Later, at the meeting with the village chief, the old man gets all excited about the prize, but Gelda says they're going to strip the whole beast and asks if they can keep what's left over. The chief shoots back with a no way, saying the lord of the land is demanding more and more meat for his stockpile. That's when Alan figures out what's going on. That's why the old man let the commoners join the hunt, to farm more quickly for the others. Then Gelda goes for checkmate, saying they'll only hand over the stone and the feathers because Loden is all busted up and the family needs that meat so they don't go hungry in the winter. Alan gets into character and starts acting, saying his stomach is growling from hunger. The two of them put on an Oscar-worthy performance, but like one of those cheap cardboard Oscars. And would you believe it? It actually worked. The boss softens up and lets him keep the carcass because he owes Loden a lot. Alan takes advantage of the opening and goes for the final move, asking if, from now on, as long as he hands over the feathers and stones, he can keep the meat for himself. The boss is surprised, and Alan feels like the business plan is working. Gelda backs him up and mentions that hunting the Alba Heron isn't easy. Bose accepts the challenge and says Alan can keep the meat drop if he manages to pull off the feat of hunting more of those creatures. The two of them almost start celebrating right then and there because the plan worked out perfectly. Time goes by and we find out that Alan has become a machine, dropping an Alba Heron every 3 days. And this time, he just soloed 2 at once, without losing a single summon. In total, he's already sent 10 Alba Herons to the lobby, and with the 1000 XP he's racked up, he finally got the glow. Level 2 reached. When he opens the status menu, he almost falls over because his stamina and magic took a huge leap. He notices that his skills didn't get an upgrade, but he's super happy because his stats went way up. He's already been in this world for 6 years and finally hit level 2, which makes him decide it's time to come clean to his family about his little secret power. When he gets home, his dad almost falls out of his chair seeing him show up with 2 beasts on his back. Loden was about to ask something, but when he sees how crazy it is, he decides to just let it go. Karina shows up and Alan goes to train, thinking that to reach level 3, he'll have to farm about 20 Alba Herons. He thinks it's gonna be easy, but because he's spacing out, Karina lands a combo and beats him up, lol. At night, Alan gathers the old folks and drops the bomb. He says he received a divine oracle from Elmia that gave him a strength and intelligence buff, but with a mission harder than what 100 people could handle together. His dad says he already suspected it and remembers that Alan had a scar that disappeared out of nowhere that day. His mom asks about the ritual, and Alan explains that during the official ritual, his stats came out low because his evolution is slow and his gift is a new mod that no one has ever seen before. Loden asks what the gift is, but Alan plays dumb, puts on a blank face, and says he doesn't know because he feels that if he shows he can summon monsters now, everyone will freak out. At that, his mom gives him a big bear hug and says, "Oh son, you should have told us sooner." She had always seen the kid training like crazy, throwing rocks, and had already figured out he was trying to solo the trial that God sent him. Alan tells everyone to chill, and Loden asks what the plan is from now on. The kid doesn't hesitate. He's gonna face the challenge head on and do whatever it takes to level up and beat this thing. His dad, who already knew what he was like, says Alan can count on them for any trouble. Alan thanks him from the bottom of his heart, and Loden tells him to keep his mouth shut because if people find out, they might think he's blaspheming against the deity. But then his dad goes, "Can I tell Gelda, just to show off a little?" Alan gives the okay and the two of them laugh. Time flies and winter comes in full force, and Alan goes on his first shopping trip with Gelda. They bring the wild boar and Alba Heron loot to trade for goods. On the way, Alan asks what the real difference is between being a commoner and being a servant. Gelda explains that commoners don't have to hand over 60% of their loot to the village admin, but they do have to pay an annual tax to the government. Alan, already thinking about leveling up his life, asks if a servant can become a commoner. Gelda reveals that pay to win is real. Either you pay 10 gold coins or you get the title from the Lord of the Land for some epic achievement, although he thinks that second option is just an urban legend. They arrive at the market and Alan sticks to Gelda like a shadow to learn how to negotiate. He finds out that a piece of jerky is worth enough firewood for 4 days. Time to study the service economy. Alan starts wandering around on his own, asking about prices and doing the exchange math, but soon realizes the merchants are top-tier swindlers. He writes everything down in his paper spreadsheet. 1 gold coin is worth 100 silver coins, which is worth 1,000 copper coins, which is worth 10,000 iron coins. To save up 50 gold coins, the math is simple. The kid will have to take down 500 base albaherons. If he focuses on grinding, in a few years he'll be rich. He stops by a potion shop and asks if they have mana potions, but the bald shopkeeper laughs in his face and says he doesn't sell luxury items. Alan asks about healing potions and the guy points to the herbs. The kid, being clever, already sketches the plants so he can farm them in the wild later. Total 200 IQ move. Then he asks about the myrrhs he flowered. The old man nearly has a heart attack and says he doesn't have any, telling him that the last time he had one he got beaten up like crazy. Alan asks if the attacker was Gelda, and the bald guy confirms, saying the old man showed up looking like a raid boss demanding the best medicine. Gelda wanted to take the flower for 3 gold coins, even though it was worth 5, and he still wanted to pay on credit for the next day. The merchant refused, but Gelda insisted so much, saying it was to save his best friend, that the guy gave in and took the loss. Alan gets emotional about Gelda's loyalty to his father and gives a little pouch of meat as a gift to the bald guy. The guy's surprised, but Alan tells it straight, "That flower saved my dad, I'm really grateful." He keeps going and sees that a weapon costs 50 silver coins, but he's interrupted by an annoying kid, the merchant's son, who's hanging out with the village chief's son. Alan tries to leave peacefully, but the brat wants him to become his lackey. Alan pulls out his wooden sword and warns, "If you want PvP, you're gonna get PvP." The annoying kid calls him a coward for being armed, so Alan tells him to go get a weapon too. The kid runs off to gear up and tells Poromos not to let Alan escape. Alan greets Poromos calmly, but when the annoying kid comes back, he gets the beating of his life in seconds. Alan notices that even though he's strong, he still doesn't have Karina's raw damage. He leaves and lets the kid fume with rage. Heading back home, Alan sees his dad already recovered, with his HP at 100%. More time passes and Dagara, the kid with the axe, starts training with Alan. Alan slaps him and complains that he always jumps the gun when attacking. Dogura gets frustrated because he can't land a single hit on Alan, even when he tries to catch him off guard. At night, we meet the new member of the party, little sister Miura. Sometime later, Loden arrives with Gelda, and Tarisha finds it odd that they're late. They sit around the campfire and drop the bomb. The village chief raised the quota from 10 to 15 boars, and the commoners will have to help out again. The order came straight from the Lord of the Land, the top dog in the region. If they don't hit the target, they'll bring in more serfs, which means less land and food for everyone. Gelda warns that next year the quota will go up to 20. Things are getting crazy. Tarisha gets worried, but to the Lord, they're just low-level NPCs. Alan figures out what's going on. If the Lord keeps raising the quota, they're gonna go under no matter what. Gelda tells him to keep quiet, but Loden trusts his son and asks if they should let the commoners join in. Alan agrees and immediately takes the lead. "We need to make him useful. God Elmia gave me wisdom, so let Dad handle it." The guys are stunned. The crew got all hyped when they saw that Loden finally got back in the game and even brought the little prodigy along for the party. Loden laid it out straight. His son is definitely coming along, and this time they're going to use the kid's strategy, but he'll just be on support and won't get into any direct fights. Alan was totally bummed out because he wanted to farm some mobs and actually fight, but his dad is stubborn as hell. In the end, the plan is to train the newbies so nobody gets knocked out like the old man almost did before. Then that blonde kid Loden saved last time shows up all humble, apologizing and begging not to be carried if things get rough. But Loden tells him to chill out and just focus on his own lane. Without wasting any time, the gates open and the crew heads out. Alan starts daydreaming, thinking he's been living his peasant life for 7 years and it's the first time he's ever set foot outside the village. He spots some giant mountains and realizes that's where the boars come from every autumn to look for loot. Legend has it there's a badass white dragon up at the top. But while Alan is busy admiring the view, the crew starts teasing him, asking if he's scared to leave the safe zone. Later, at the camp, Training starts, and the servants jump right in, drawing the boar's aggro to finish it off. Their teamwork is on a pro player level. Some draw the attention, the tanks soak up the damage, and in the end, everyone focuses on the weak spots. They use Alan's strategy so the commoners can land the last hit and farm XP to level up. The plan was a total success, except Alan kept complaining because since he just stood there watching and didn't do anything, he didn't get a single XP point. For the kid, it was one of those victories that taste like bitter defeat. Later, while getting some water, he tries to convince a buddy to ask Loden to let him use a spear on the next hunt. The guy answers, no way he's doing that, because Loden would smack him just for suggesting it. Alan gets bummed out, and the other guy mentions that he also wanted to hunt, but since his wife is pregnant, he prefers to play it safe with his butcher's knife. Alan hears butcher, and his eyes light up, because that's exactly the kind of help he needed. He takes the guy to his house, and the dude almost falls over when he sees how much alcohol is there. Alan explains that there are way too many mobs for him to handle butchering alone and offers 2 bags of meat for every animal that got butchers. The guy excitedly agrees, and Alan already thinks this is way more profitable since the city butchers charge a ridiculous amount of gold. On top of that, it saves travel time and gives him some upfront cash since he needs to save up 50 gold coins to get his family out of servitude. Some time passes and the crew heads back out to hunt, this time bringing more commoners to form 2 groups and double their boar farming. Alan just doesn't get why the Baron of those lands is so obsessed with pork, since it doesn't seem like there's any food shortage going on. Then another boar comes down the hill and they pull off the combo again, helping everyone level up. Everyone gets super hyped and Alan opens his grimoire with a grin from ear to ear. The plan worked. Turns out, before the fight, he summoned Demka at a strategic spot within a 50-meter radius. Poor Demka ended up getting crushed, but it was enough for the system to count Alan as having participated in the battle and bump him up to level 3. It was a necessary sacrifice. F for Demka. 3 months go by, New Year's comes around, and Alan gets invited to the village chief's mansion. He comes back with Karina, who's super excited about the sweets and rewards they got. After that, everyone gets together for an epic meat feast, and while everyone's stuffing their faces, Gelda asks if the village chief said anything about them. Alan says that the old man is super grateful, and that at the rate things are going, the goal of 20 boars a year is going to be easily reached. All thanks to the training of the newbies. Then, Gelda notices that Alan got a bottle of booze, and Loden's and Gelda's eyes practically light up. Alan, who's no fool, pretends he didn't notice and asks his brother if he wants to keep practicing with the spear, while the 2 old guys just stand there drooling over the bottle. Alan asks what's going on, and his dad says that since the village chief gave him the liquor, he could at least share it with the old folks. Alan says no way, saying the bottle is his, but the guys start complaining that he's not even old enough to drink yet. Then Alan throws down the challenge. Only whoever beats him in a competition gets the bottle. Gelda accepts right away, and Alan already sets his own prize. If he wins, he gets to use the spear on every hunt this year. The guys don't even realize they've fallen for the bait and agree. The competition? Arm wrestling. They think it's gonna be easy, but Alan already activates all his strength buffs and hidden blessings. He even gives Gelda a head start, but then totally humiliates him. Alan figures Gelda's attack power must be between 150 and 200, which is pretty high. After a break, it's Loden's turn, and Alan is surprised when he feels his father's hands, all calloused from working hard every single day to support the family. The old man is super proud, you know? Loden can barely believe his son's already grown so much and wants to challenge his own dad to an arm wrestling match. Alan even tries his best to win the match and secure the spear buff, but Loden's a real boss and wins the fight. That's when Alan realizes Dad must have, at the very least, 300 attack points. A beast. He accepts defeat, hands over the bottle of liquor, and the 2 old guys start downing their drinks without hesitation. Alan stands there, analyzing the stats. He guesses that Gelda is rank D, and his dad must be around rank C. Loden, already a bit tipsy, lays it out strength. The kid's not weak, it's just that his old man is way too overpowered. And he warns, no hunting boars until you can beat your dad at arm wrestling. Alan's annoyed, but he's already planning his rematch. If he can level up his summon to level 4 before autumn, the game changes. Meanwhile, Gelda starts getting a bit annoying because of the alcohol, but then Matilda shows up and puts him in his place, leaving Alan stunned. He's already thinking, whoa, Matilda must be rank C2 for sure. Time goes by, and at 7 years old, Alan finally levels up his summon, unlocking the rank E creatures. But to unlock the new cars, he has to start combining everything. Now that his mana is full, he starts experimenting. He notices that he unlocked a storage skill, and since it doesn't say the limit, he starts testing it out. He throws a stick in there, takes it out, throws in a rock, and realizes he can see everything in his inventory just by thinking about it. The kid starts stuffing everything he sees in there, and the space just never runs out. He even gets a little worried about this infinite inventory, like God mode level. He keeps thinking about how in any RPG, item management is what defines the game, and he doesn't get why he got this overpowered skill now. But being a good gamer, he decides to focus on the new summons. He tries to summon an E-rank insect, but the game tells him that now the cost is E-rank magic stones. He runs to his secret stash, tries to use a stone, and nothing happens. Then he remembers the inventory, puts the stone in there, and bam, the summon works. A giant moth pops up right in front of him, but then his mom shows up out of nowhere. He panics and tells the creature to hide with some random excuse. When she leaves, the kid starts celebrating, but then he gets startled by his own summon. A giant saber-toothed tiger. The creature looks dangerous, but it's tamer than a kitten. He stores the pet in the grimoire and tries to create a bird by fusing a beast card with an insect. It works, but he realizes he's gonna need to farm a ton of magic stones. The upside is, these summons give him a crazy buff to his stats. At night, he asks the father of the horned rabbits, but Loden says they disappeared after digging a ditch around the village. Alan laments, wondering how he's going to farm stones now. The next day, while everyone else is training, or more like getting beat up during training, he goes to have a chat with Paromos. His buddy reveals that D and C rank stones are a luxury in the capital, but E rank stones are basically trash. People just throw them away. He even picks one up off the ground to show him. Alan realizes he's going to have to become a professional trash picker to level up. After farming some stones, he completes his E rank deck and goes to test out the abilities. Suddenly, a wild boar appears out of nowhere. The summons automatically switch to defense mode to protect their master. Papillon distracts the beast, Vani heals Alan's scratches, Tamaz jumps on the boar's neck with his fangs, and another creature that shows up gets taken down by Wally. In the end, it seems like it was all a mental test, but Alan comes to an epic conclusion. He spent 7 years trying to figure out how to play as a summoner without any guide or tutorial. He finally understands the role of each class. Beasts are the DPS, attackers, insects give debuffs, birds are for support and scouting, stones are the tanks, and plants are the healers. The kid is a whole party all by himself. And the infinite inventory? It's so he can carry an arsenal of magic stones and pets. Now Alan knows he has an unbeatable army in his hands, capable of crushing any enemy. He's not just a summoner. The kid is getting more dangerous than the Demon King himself. The mood in the village changed in an instant when the village chief arrived with news that made everyone's heart skip a beat. The Baron decided he was going to show up there next month. To Alan, the guy is nothing more than a big shot who thinks he's the center of the universe. But the visit was official, and the request that came with it was pretty heavy, since they needed to deliver no less than 20 album boars. Apparently, the nobleman decided he wanted to see up close how the folks hunt these beasts, which made Elda furious, complaining that the Baron was unbearable for demanding so many animals and still wanting a front row show. Rodin even tried to handle the situation calmly, but he got suspicious when the boss said that Alan had to join the hunt no matter what, like some kind of luxury tour guide. The reason was simple and even kind of funny. The boss's son, Palomas, is totally clueless about this stuff and would just end up embarrassing himself in front of the nobility. Basically, the plan was for Alan to be in charge of entertaining the big shot, starting with a fancy dinner the night before the hunt. The boss even tried to bribe the kid with some special fruit, but Alan isn't that cheap and knows exactly how much he's worth on the market. He realized right away that this was the golden opportunity he'd been waiting for, because as a servant, it would take him at least 10 years to become a commoner just by working hard in the fields. But the Baron has that social cheat code where he can grant the title of commoner to whoever he wants. With that in mind, Alan accepted the mission, totally focused on his career upgrade. The anticipation for the arrival of the noble entourage turned the routine of the quiet village into a real beehive of activity. Every detail had to be flawless, because this wasn't just a courtesy visit, it was the future of that community at stake, under the watchful and critical eyes of the aristocratic. The village chief, though he tried to keep his composure, showed his nervousness with every order he gave. Alan, on the other hand, kept the calm of a veteran, processing every bit of information and calculating each move, as if he were facing a chessboard where the pieces were people and the prize was his freedom and that of his family. D-Day finally arrived, and the Baron showed up accompanied by his daughter Cecil, handing out compliments and thanking the chief for all his hard work over the years, pointing out that in 15 years, no one in the Grand Elfife had been as successful as that little village. He made a point of explaining that the pressure for the 20 boars came straight from the king, all because of a certain Viscount of Carnell, a first-class gossip who kept bragging about the boar meat to the sovereign, which nearly made the village chief fall out of his chair from the shock of such a responsibility. At dinner, the meat was absolutely delicious, and Alan, acting all sly and full of confidence, jumped into the conversation to explain in detail that the dish was made from fresh albano hunted the day before especially for the nobleman. The Baron was impressed by the boy's confidence, but Cecil, who always acts like she owns the place, made that classic disgusted face and asked how they could possibly allow a mere servant to be in the same room as them. The Baron, who isn't stupid, immediately shut her down, reminding her that the servants are honorable and essential members of the fief, but even so, she kept glaring at Alan with that look that says she never forgets an insult. The tension during dinner was almost palpable, like a bowstring stretched to its limit, about to snap. While Cecil maintained her rigid and aristocratic posture, Alan navigated the conversation with an etiquette that didn't match his social standing, which only made the Baron more curious and the young noblewoman even more suspicious. Every word spoken by the protagonist was carefully chosen to show intelligence without coming off as arrogant, a delicate balance that he mastered with ease. The captain of the guard, watching from a distance, realized that this boy was not just a simple hunter's son. There was something different in his gaze, a spark of ambition and knowledge that went beyond the boundaries of that remote village. The next day, the hunting operation began with the Baron and Cecil strategically positioned in a watchtower built especially for the event. When the village hunters showed up wearing full armor made from the hides and materials of last year's boars, the Baron was blown away by such ingenuity. Alan took on the role of commentator and explained the whole bait strategy, which involves the brave guys who venture into the woods to lure the monsters out into the open field. As the anticipation grew, Captain Senoff took the opportunity to mention that Karena's progress was so incredible that they were going to send a tutor from the capital to help her study for the entrance exam to the Royal Academy. Alan almost burst out laughing, imagining the scene, but the focus quickly shifted back to the field when the bait runners appeared, sprinting desperately with the giant boar hot on their heels. The containment group sprang into action with coordination that looked like a choreographed dance and took down the beast without mercy. Cecil, who wasn't used to the harsh reality of the field, couldn't handle the bloody scene and fainted right then and there. When she came to, she was faced with 2 more boars being taken down at a frantic pace, without the Baron's elite knights even having to lift a finger, which made the poor thing pass out again from sheer shock. At the end of it all, Alan revealed with the utmost nonchalance that they had already secured several animals before the entourage even arrived, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the villagers were much more than just simple peasants. The efficiency they showed on the battlefield left a Baron in a state of euphoria mixed with deep contemplation. He realized that the safety and prosperity of his fief depended on capable minds like Alan's, and on the raw yet organized strength of Rodin's hunters. The slaughter of the boars was not just to show a strength, it was a lesson in logistics and military tactics applied to survival. While the men cleared the area and prepared the carcasses, the silence of the forest was broken only by restrained cheers, as everyone knew that the real judgment was yet to come, in the words the Baron would speak after the spectacle. Taking advantage of the hype and the Baron's good mood, Alan decided it was time to negotiate like a grown-up and asked for permission to build more defensive walls and, most importantly, to get authorization to sell liquor among the serfs. The goal was to keep the village economy stable since the surplus of meat would drive prices down, and also to make sure the hunters' morale stayed high. After all, nobody faces a giant boar without a little extra incentive. Captain Senov thought it was an unusually smart idea, and the Baron, visibly pleased, promised he would seriously consider the request. When it was time to leave, Cecil tried to get in one last jab at Alan to have the last word, but she ended up losing her balance and almost fell off her horse, only to be saved by the butler. She left there dying of embarrassment, unable to say another word. It was at this moment of triumph that the Baron kept his word and officially raised Alan's family to the status of commoners, which opened up the world for our protagonist, finally allowing him to hunt dragons and other legendary creatures beyond the village limits. The Baron also asked to hear the real story of the village's founding, and Rodan, his voice choked with emotion, told how they almost starved to death 13 years ago and about the sacrifice of losing a great friend during the first official hunt. Moved by their bravery, the Baron offered an extra reward of their choosing, and Rodan, showing the immense love of a father, instead of asking for riches or that famous liquor, asked the Baron to let Alan work directly in the capital, because he knew his son was far too brilliant to be limited to manual farm work. Rodan's decision was the turning point. Alan, who had always planned every step of his progress, suddenly found himself on a path he hadn't mapped out himself, but that made perfect sense for his long-term ambitions. His father's sacrifice in letting him go so he could shine on a bigger stage was the ultimate proof of that family's unbreakable bond. Meanwhile, the Baron saw Alan as a valuable investment, someone who could bring innovation and order to his own administration in the capital. The village's story, marked by blood, sweat, and an almost divine resilience, would now reach the king's ears, turning those simple hunters into living legends of the kingdom. The Baron thought the proposal was excellent and decided to make Alan the new personal servant of the Granbell family. Cecil even tried to throw a fit, saying she didn't want a former servant in her house, but since Alan was now technically a commoner and the order came from her father, she had to suck it up. Seeing Rodan crying tears of pure happiness and pride for his son's future, Alan felt he couldn't ruin the moment and accepted his fate with an open heart. On the day of the big departure, the mood in the village was heavy with melancholy, and Karina, her eyes red from holding back tears, asked for one last fight to seal their friendship. It was an epic battle, a real spectacle, where Alan used almost all his accumulated magic stones to summon 20 copies of his creatures and boost his agility to the max. He won the match with a masterful move, but so his friend wouldn't feel bad, he declared it a tie and promised they'd settle who was better the next time they met. After receiving a special dagger as a gift from Dagora and saying goodbye to each of his adventure companions, Alan climbed into the luxury carriage along with the Baron and Cecil. As the carriage pulled away and he saw his mother, Teresia, crying and waving goodbye through the window, our protagonist's heart tightened with preemptive longing. But he knew that life at the mansion was the next level of this grand real-life RPG, and he was more than ready to master the game. The journey to the capital would be long, crossing landscapes that Alan only knew from maps and stories told around the campfire. Inside the luxurious carriage compartment, the silence was broken only by the sound of wheels on gravel and Cecil's sighs of disdain as she refused to accept the new reality. Alan, however, was already mentally mapping out the possibilities of the big city. He thought about the new monsters he would encounter, the guilds, the libraries filled with forgotten knowledge, and above all, how he would use his privileged position to make sure his family would never have to fear winter or hunger again. The weight of Dagora's dagger on his belt was a constant reminder of his roots, while the Grand Bell crest on the carriage door pointed to his uncertain but bright future. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the sway of the vehicle, and gave a small smile. The real adventure was just beginning. As soon as Alan sets foot in Baron Granville's palace, the kid is just left speechless. The beauty and luxury of the place are so over the top that he feels like his whole life before this was spent in a shack. But hold on, the easy life doesn't even last 5 minutes, because soon enough he's already being used as a human step stool for Cecily, the Baron's daughter. The girl is sitting on his shoulders trying to reach a fruit high up in a tree, but she just can't get it no matter what. Alan, with that trademark zero patience of his, says, "Hey girl, use your head. Stand on my shoulders instead of just sitting. You'll reach way higher." She listens, grabs the fruit, and takes a bite, full of anticipation. But as soon as she takes the first bite, her face sours instantly. The fruit is just awful, and she throws it away without a second thought. Alan tells it like it is. Fruit that grows way up high is usually sour anyway, doesn't taste good. Cecily turns to him and yells, "If you knew that, why didn't you tell me from the start?" He just shrugs with that shameless look. "I thought you just wanted to try it." With the bad taste in her mouth and her ego bruised, she tells him to run to the market and buy a fruit called Bobo to cleanse her palate. That's a real maid's errand, honestly. On his way to the market, a gigantic shadow passes over him, blocking out the sun. He looks up and thinks it's a giant balloon, but Cecily immediately shuts him down, calling him an idiot. "You've never seen a magic ship before?" Alan stays quiet on the outside, but inside he's thinking, back in my town, I'd seen magic before, like an enchanted clock or a chandelier. But a flying ship this big sailing through the sky? That's a whole different level. The next day, Alan wakes up in the basement, which is the makeshift spot where they put him to sleep, far from the nice rooms, of course. Right away, he notices a weird smell of plants all around, and then something incredible happens. He can identify every plant just by its scent, and automatically absorbs all their abilities. Yep, his system is still totally overpowered. His stomach growls and he heads down to the servant's kitchen. On the way, the head servant, Rickle, calls the boy over and lays it out straight. "You'd better get along with Cecily or your life here is gonna be hell." Alan had already noticed that the girl was a tough nut to crack, and Rickle, just by looking into the kid's eyes, can already tell that she's draining his peace. He takes the opportunity to ask how the palace hierarchy works. Rickle explains that the servants are divided by roles: cooks, gardeners, cleaners, but there's a separate group called assistants who stay close to the Baron and handle special and confidential tasks. Alan files everything away neatly in his memory. Later, at breakfast time, Alan notices that the Baron's meal is really simple, a lot like what he used to eat back in the village. Rich folks with humble habits at the table. The Baron's wife compliments him. "You can tell you're a smart kid. You learned your tasks in a really short time." Alan doesn't miss the chance and puts on the company shirt. "Thank you, ma'am, but the credit goes to the Baron for giving me the chance to live here." "I'll do my best." She loves the answer and tells her husband he made the right choice in hiring him. The Baron agrees. He doesn't have any magical talent, but he's really clever. And then the mood gets heavy, folks. Cecily hears the comment about lacking talent and starts laughing in Alan's face, thinking she's all that, bragging that she has magic and her brother is a swordsman. The Baron doesn't let it slide and scolds her bluntly. "I've told you 1,000 times to stop bragging about your abilities." At that moment, we see Thomas, the younger brother, crying in a corner. "Why was I the only one born without any talent?" The Baron tries to comfort him and says that soon he'll go to Noble's Academy, where they'll find a vocation for him. Thomas wanted to go to the same academy as his older brother, Mihai, but the Baron lays it out straight. That academy only accepts those who are born with talent. Don't underestimate nobles. I myself got in there without any talent. It was there that I met your mother and built this whole family. Cecily feels awkward, apologizes to Thomas, but shoots Alan a look full of pure anger. Classic. The day off finally arrives for our boy. He goes for a walk around the city, spots the Adventurers Guild, and his excitement goes through the roof. He walks in all excited, goes up to the receptionist calling her boss, and asks to register with all the seriousness in the world. She asks his age. "I'm 8 years old." She gives a forced smile and lets him know that registration is only possible from age 12. House rules, no exceptions. Alan is fuming on the inside, but doesn't let it show. He goes straight to the mission board to study the system. With or without registration, the goal is to farm experience. The plan doesn't change. Then a big, grumpy adventurer shows up yelling, "What are you doing here, kid? This isn't a playground." Alan apologizes, but his curiosity gets the better of him and he fires off a bunch of questions about monster rankings, someone named Mash in rank B, and the White Dragon. The guy loses his patience, but ends up explaining that the dragon is so powerful that even experienced adventurers tremble just thinking about it, and that in the region there are the extremely rare mithril stones which are worth a fortune. Alan's eyes light up as he quickly does the math in his head. The adventurers team shows up, calling him to spend the reward money at a bar, and they disappear together. Alan leaves the guild with his mind racing, already planning his next moves. As he's leaving the city, a guard stops him and asks for his exit pass. He pulls out the stone with the Baron's emblem, and the guard immediately lets him through, all embarrassed. Alan runs off like crazy, excited to finally be able to fight without anyone watching. The plan is precise: don't go too far so he doesn't run into monsters he still can't handle. He summons the eagles to sweep the area and soon discovers the problem with the tiger. The beast is dumb as a rock, extremely low IQ, doesn't follow any complex commands, just pure brute force. When one of the eagles comes back to let him know it found the target, he runs over, finds a group of goblins, and gets to work. He summons the tigers to surround them, but some of the stronger goblins start fighting back. He changes tactics and releases the butterfly sleeping power. The goblins all fall into a deep sleep within seconds. He tries to finish them off by throwing rocks at their heads, but their skulls are way too tough. He orders the tigers to finish them off while they're sleeping. When the last one goes down, a notification pops up, 1,000 experience points all at once. Alan almost screams with happiness in the middle of the forest. He spends the whole day using this strategy, and his level doubles before nightfall. The hype is so high that he decides to keep going at night, but the eagles just stand still. Their night vision's terrible, they can't see anything in the dark. He freaks out. Am I raising eagles or chickens here? You guys only work during the day? To make things worse, he's completely lost in the dark forest. By some miracle, he finds his way back, stops at a weapon shop, and buys iron balls so he doesn't have to rely on rocks from the ground anymore. At the palace, the Baron praises 2 months of great work, but directly asks where Alan goes every morning on his day off. Alan tells it straight, no beating around the bush. I hunt monsters in the forest, sir. I'm the son of the great boar hunter, it's in my blood. The Baron thinks that's reasonable. The assistant warns that he can't sell meat to the city's butcher shops because it would damage the Baron's reputation. The thing is, Alan was throwing everything away anyway, he just wanted the combat experience. 6 months later, we find Alan chillin', eating a snack in the forest when the eagles show up in a total panic. He tries to ignore it, but when they all arrive together in a panic, he realizes something serious is going on and drops his snack. When he gets to the scene, he's shocked. That same rude adventurer from the guild is lying on the ground, badly injured, and his team is being swallowed up by a huge horde of goblins. Alan doesn't think twice. He grabs his iron balls and charges in, but since he can't use his summons in front of others, he goes into hand-to-hand combat. He dodges the attacks with unbelievable agility for an 8-year-old and thinks, the passive buffs for my summons have really boosted my attack and agility. He takes down 3 goblins by himself, and the adventurer girl killed another one. The horde retreats and disappears, but the adventurer is almost done for. The team starts to panic because the city's way too far away. Alan calmly walks over and applies a medicinal herb to the wound. The effect is insane. The wound completely disappears in seconds, like it was never there. The adventurer gets up, not believing he's still alive. Everyone is in shock, staring at that kid. They want to reward him at all costs, but Alan cuts them off. The only favor I ask is that you never ever tell anyone what happened here. That's the payment. They swear up and down. Then he adds, but since you want to repay me, get me 100 E-rank magic stones and we'll call it even. On the way back, one thing keeps running through his mind. The same plant that took a month to heal his father cured the adventurer in seconds. He figures that the healing power scales with the level of the person being treated. The stronger the person, the faster and more effective the herb works. It makes perfect sense. He also scolds the eagle for abandoning the original mission, but before finishing the reprimand, he asks if the eagle did it because it realized the adventurers were at risk of dying. The eagle confronts. Alan stops and processes that for a few seconds. His summons don't just have intelligence, they have genuine feelings and empathy. He is amazed and apologizes for the scolding with a smile. What a squad mate, huh? At night, back to his servant routine, there's Alan again with Cecily on his shoulders, trying to reach ingredients on the highest shelf to bake a cake for his brother who's coming back soon. But in a clumsy move, she knocks everything over. The glass jars shatter on the floor with a deafening crash. Rickle comes in, desperate, shouting, "Who did this?" Continuing our story, we see the Baron and his children having dinner, and everyone is stunned by the unbelievable flavor of the meat that was served. When the Baron asks where it came from, Cecily blurts out that it's meat from the wild hares Alan hunted in the forest. The Baron is filled with pride and says that's the least you'd expect from the son of the great hunter Holden. Right after, he mentions that Alan's village managed to take down about 20 wild boars, meeting the demands of the entire kingdom. Alan is overjoyed to hear that his father is still crushing it at hunting, even with him far from home. But the Baron's son, Thomas, gets a bit frustrated and asks, aren't they going to eat wild boar meat anymore? That's when Alan finds out something troubling. All the wild boars his village hunts are going straight to the royal capital, and not even a whiff of it makes it to the Baron's mansion. He even wonders, why does the capital need so many animals like that? The Baron explains that the king asked them to ramp up the hunting, but in the end, there's nothing left for him. The Baron's wife, Mrs. Granville, immediately gets worried and asks what they're going to serve at the parties if there's no wild boar. But the Baron calmly replies that they can just as well serve other things. That's when Thomas turns to Alan and asks if he can hunt a white deer next time. Cecile immediately cuts her brother off and says that any request for Alan has to go through her first. Feel the drama. Alan is totally confused and thinks, wait, is she my manager now? Thomas's mother tries to calm things down, but Alan steps up and promises the boy he'll bring the white deer today. Everyone at the table celebrates the hike. In Alan's mind, he figures this white deer must be an S-rank monster, just like the boars they used to hunt. He heads into the forest, summons his eagle, and right away spots the so-called white deer. The boy runs over and is startled to see the creature finishing off a group of goblins, realizing that up close, the size of the beast is colossal, nothing like what he had imagined. Then Alan puts his plan into action, summons the frogs, and has them use their taunt ability. The frogs keep jumping in front of the stag like a bunch of idiots until the creature finally snaps and loses its patience. The stag charges at him, but Alan has the frogs dodge at the last second. They repeat this dance several times until they lure the white stag right into a trap. When the creature leaps in for the final attack, it falls straight into the hole. Alan pulls out his dagger and finishes the job. But when he gets back to town, chaos breaks out. The guards panic, thinking the white stag is invading the place. What's causing all the confusion? It's because Alan was dragging the giant carcass and shouting for Thomas, which made the guards think the monster itself was talking. Alan comes out from under the stag and says, "You blockheads, it's me talking. Come help me already, this thing weighs over a ton." He tells them he brought Thomas's order. When the Baron arrives, he can hardly believe what he's seeing. Thomas, on the other hand, is overjoyed to finally have some special meat guaranteed for the New Year's party. Backstage, the Baron goes to talk to his assistant, completely incredulous that Alan managed to take down a monster of that level by himself. After all, we're talking about a powerful creature, a rank C. He asks, how can a talentless kid do something like that? We need to investigate his abilities thoroughly, even if it means redoing his talent assessment. Later on, Alan drops by the Baron's assistant's office and leaves with 2 official roles, hunting monsters and protecting the city. The boy can hardly believe he finally has an official reason to go wandering around the forest. The salary offered is 100 silver coins, exactly double what he makes at the mansion. But our protagonist isn't naive, and he quickly senses they're trying to shortchange him with his fixed salary since that white deer alone was worth way more than that on the market. The assistant notices his thoughtful expression and asks if he thinks the money is too little. Alan plays it cool, says the money's great, but he's already starting to come up with a plan to use his official title to hunt and sell the meat on the side. But then the assistant comes in and totally rains on his parade. He tells Alan that he'll only be allowed to hunt once a week because his main job is still being Cecile's servant. Feel the disappointment. The kid's dreams of getting filthy rich by farming in the forest go up in smoke right then and there. After that, we see Alan and Cecile watching a flying ship soaring across the sky. Alan, who isn't dumb, quickly figures out that the ship must use magic stones to fly. As soon as the ship lands, Cecile runs over to give her older brother, Mihai, a hug. He had just arrived from a trip. Alan comes over, offers to help carry the luggage, and Mihai gives him a look, thinking it's pretty weird that they'd hire such a small servant for the job. But Mihai puts 2 and 2 together and figures that for Alan to be working there at that age, the kid must have some kind of exceptional skill. And Alan immediately realizes that Mihai is a really sharp guy who doesn't miss a thing. The scene then cuts to Alan, full of energy, chasing after a giant Circassian rooster, which he takes down with a precise stone throw to the head. Back in the kitchen, the head chef is left speechless because Alan managed to get not only the rooster, but also a super rare giant frog. Then, the head bubbler calls Alan over to watch an intense duel that's going on. It's Mihai versus the captain of the guard himself. It's basically a trial by fire to see how strong Mihai is now that he's back from the academy. And let me tell you, Alan is blown away by the insanely high level of the fight. When the match ends, Mihai spots the monsters Alan hunted and immediately throws down a challenge to the kid. Alan accepts the challenge and borrows the captain of the guard's mithril sword. He checks his stats, sees that he's leveled up a lot, and heads into the fight full of confidence. The fight starts, and Alan even tries to go easy so he doesn't hurt the boss's son, but Mihai blocks the attack like it's nothing and counters with lightning-fast strikes. The fight is so intense that it scares Mihai's mother, but the captain steps in to reassure her, saying there's no way Mihai would lose to an amateur after grinding for a year at the academy. And that's exactly what happens. Mihai lands a heavy blow that knocks the sword right out of our hero's hand. Even so, Mihai compliments the boy's fencing, and even Cecile throws in a compliment, saying that this time she won't call him weak. That's when Thomas mentions that he's been exploring a magic dungeon and fighting monsters head-on, which gets Alan super hyped, dying to go along. Mihail then says goodbye to everyone, letting them know he has to go on a long trip, and Alan already sets up a rematch for when he gets back, which Mihail immediately agrees to. To wrap things up, Alan finds out that the academy Mihail is heading to is the exact same one where Krina is studying, and he gets his hopes up that he'll run into her soon. Things take a turn when a noble named Carnal pays a visit to Baron Granville. The butler gives Alan a heads up, telling him not to mess up while serving this guy, because he's very influential and rules over several lands in the White Dragon Mountains. Carnell digs into the rabbit meat, thinking it's wild boar, and praises it a lot. But in the middle of the conversation, he himself admits to being the one responsible for the capital snatching up all the wild boar meat and not leaving even a bone for the Baron. The butler then explains to Alan that the White Dragon Mountains are home to a white dragon's nest and are full of mithril ore, but the whole area is surrounded by traps, which is exactly the root of the economic crisis in their town. In a moment of honesty, Carnal admits that his own daughter has no talent at all and that he's incredibly jealous of the Baron for having 3 super talented kids. Alan watches this in shock, seeing nobles exchanging barbs and jealousy over talent, and thinks to himself, man, if the rich and noble are like this, just imagine how it is for poor folks like us. After that, Alan goes to chat with the adventurers he had saved earlier and asks them for some hot tips about C-rank monsters that hang around outside the city. The group warns him that it's really dangerous and decides to help out, pitching in so he can buy some better gear, like a top-tier cloak with great stats to handle the heat. With his new cloak on, Alan heads out to hunt in the forest. The eagle summon gives a signal, warning about a C-rank monster in the area, and he comes face to face with a giant boar snoring loudly. He brings the tigers into the field, and after a tough battle, he finally manages to take the beast down. Alan racks up 1500 XP and even pockets a C-rank magic stone. But the peace doesn't last long. Right after that, the eagle marks another C-rank prey on the map, a shielded ant. He sends the tigers in again, but the creature's shell is just impenetrable, and the ant wipes the tigers out in a single blow. Things get ugly. Quick change of plans. He summons the butterflies with sleep powder, puts the ant to sleep, flips the beast onto its back, and tries to pierce its shell, but no luck. The ant wakes up pissed and he has to go all out, stabbing the thing repeatedly through the gaps in its armor until he finally finishes it off, earning a hard-fought 3000 XP. Right there, in the middle of all that struggle, he realizes that brute force isn't enough against these tough shells, and from now on, he'll need to rely on magic since his intelligence stat is super high. Following that logic, Alan and Cecile go see a mage in town. The boy humbly asks him to assess his magical aptitude. Cecile, as usual, calls him an idiot, reminding him that his previous evaluation showed 0 talent. The mage then has Alan put his hand on the crystal ball, and the result is clear. No reaction at all, 0 magical aptitude. It's heartbreaking. Alan is extremely frustrated and angrily wonders, what the heck is all this intelligence in my stats for if I can't even cast a single spell? We see the Baron just chillin', eatin', when out of nowhere the city's alarm bell starts ringing frantically. The mood instantly gets tense. The head butler rushes in, announcing that there's a colossal monster at the city borders about to invade everything. The Baron asks where this information came from, and the butler says it was the gate guards who reported it. He immediately tries to find out about the guard commander, but the answer is that the guy went out on a mission and won't be back for another 2 hours. Feel the tension. Without wasting any time, the Baron orders them to notify the Adventurers Guild to evacuate the people and call the warriors to defend the place. When Alan hears all this commotion, he turns to the Baron and asks to join the fight and protect the city. At that moment, Cecilia steps in and says that he's her servant and can't do anything without her permission. Alan just goes, "Give me a break, girl," and points out that now he has the official title of Monster Hunter from the Baron, so it's his right to go help the adventurers handle this mess. Right after that, we see the panic set in. The townspeople are running away in terror while Alan goes against the flow, heading straight toward the creature. We find out that this creature is known as the Killer Ogre. Alan had already seen its profile back at the Adventurers Guild and knew the creature was ranked B, the kind that plenty of experienced adventurers have died trying to hunt. The guards and adventurers are scrambling to get everyone safely inside the walls. Then a resident runs up in a panic. "Help me, boss! My wife and kids are trapped in the carriage outside." When Alan looks over, the scene is intense. The monster is huge, absolutely terrifying, and it's already devouring the carriage's horse. The guy's wife and daughter are inside, terrified. Just as the ogre starts going after the carriage to eat the two of them, Alan jumps into action. He grabs his iron ball and hurls it straight at the monster's face. Ian, we see the creature's eyes spurting blood. Alan starts mocking and taunting the ogre to get its attention. One of the guards even yells, "What are you doing, kid? Get in already." But Alan doesn't even listen and throws another iron ball. But this time, the ogre manages to block it with its hand. Alan then tells the guards he's gonna lure the monster over to the White Dragon Mountains. In the blink of an eye, the brute charges at him with everything he's got, but our hero manages to dodge at the last second and hits the road. And the chase goes on. Alan is running while keeping an eye on his stats. And we find out that the kid burned through all his mana to buff his own body. In other words, for now, there's no summoning monsters to help out. The ogre tries to hit Alan in the middle of the chase, but he dodges at the very last split second. Alan ends up tripping, falls to the ground, and starts scheming. What am I supposed to do about this annoying beast that won't stop laughing at me? Suddenly, he gets a system notification, opens the panels again, and sees that his mana bar has regenerated a good amount. Quickly, he rearranges things, removes the cards of some monsters he won't use right now to focus on the ones he really needs. He gets up, starts running again, and makes the ogre chase after him once more. At that moment, he summons the butterflies that release a sleeping powder, but the tactic goes down the drain because the powder has absolutely no effect on the big guy. He even has the butterflies release an extra dose of the sleeping powder, but the monster doesn't care at all and starts crushing the poor things. Alan goes back to running away, thinking, doesn't this guy ever give up? The chase goes on for a long time. The sun starts to set and night begins to fall. To throw him off, Alan dives into the trees, and the ogre stays there, sniffing around and hunting him in the thick forest. A while later, we see Alan leaning against the base of a tree, catching his breath. After running for a while, our protagonist finally manages to shake off the creature. Seeing that the summons didn't even scratch it, he decides to get out of there, grabs his cloak, and gets ready for whatever comes next. But at the crucial moment, the monster finds him again and the chase starts all over. Cut to the next scene. 3 days have passed and Alan finally arrives in the city. At the entrance, the guard tries to help but passes out on the spot. When Alan wakes up, he's with Cecil and Sabaz. The little one is super relieved that he's okay, but still scolds him for making everyone worry. Seeing that he's feeling better, Sabaz asks him to get ready and tell the Baron everything that happened. A little while later, Alan is there, face to face with the nobleman. He apologizes for not being able to defeat the monster and for causing trouble, but the adults tell him not to worry about it. They even acknowledge the boy's courage. The Baron hands over 2 bags full of gold coins, one for driving the creature away and the other as a reward from the family he saved. Without further ado, the Baron asks him to avoid going so far from the city on his next hunts, and Alan promises he'll be more careful. A few days later, our protagonist was out hunting monsters with his new sword, Dimitri. After taking down a giant ant, he remembers those hours he spent experimenting. He calls the Hawkins, who were flying through the forest, and tells the rest of the group to back off. Just like that, he turns 2 of the Hawkins into cards and starts pulling some items out of the grimoire. Then, he asks the Hawkin to guess the object inside the bag. The creature gets it right, as does the one he just summoned. However, when he calls a Hawkin that was flying far away, the creature gets it wrong. He tries again with the one he just summoned, and this time it gets it right. To wrap things up, he summons Popo, but this one can't guess the object. After all these tests, he writes everything down in the grimoire, concluding that the knowledge of the summons stays with them as long as the summoner is alive. Several months went by, and Mihai returned from the academy. Alan didn't waste any time and took the opportunity to train with them, but as expected, he ended up losing. After training, they went to have lunch. While sitting at the table, they told Mahai that Alan had faced a Merdeal Go. Yeah, tough names aren't really my thing. The older brother listened to the story, impressed, but Alan quickly downplayed it, saying it was no big deal. Even Cecil laughed at him, reminding everyone that after the fight, he slept for 2 whole days. In the middle of a conversation, Thomas asks Mihai if he would be able to defeat that monster. Mihai is straightforward. He wouldn't stand a chance. Suddenly, a soldier comes in with urgent news. The white dragon is migrated. Everyone is in shock. The Baron doesn't want to waste any time and orders the knights to search the mines, but Senef suggests they first find the dragon's new nest before heading to any of the 4 mining sites. The Baron agrees to the idea. Mihai even offers to go along, but Senef shuts him down. She says it's way too dangerous and that the mission could take months. Meanwhile, Alan is deep in thought. Now it's gonna be a lot harder to go out hunting monsters with all this movement from the night. Another day, while resting under a tree, he takes a look at the grimoire and discovers a new skill, sharing. Curious, he decides to test it with the Hawkins. And man, something amazing happens. Alan starts seeing everything through the bird's eyes. With that, he's able to observe the entire forest from above and even control the creature's movements. To him, it almost feels like he's playing with several characters at the same time. Then he tries something bolder. He summons several Hawkins and uses the skill on all of them. It works perfectly, but when he tries to do the same with different creatures, he starts to get a splitting headache. That's how he realizes the skill has a limit. Thinking it over, he realizes that this limit depends on his intelligence. By increasing his stats, he's able to control up to 6 summons at the same time. With that in mind, he puts together a little squad of creatures and sends them out to hunt monsters on their own. The summons work like a real team. Some immobilize, others attack, and others provide support. With this strategy, the creatures can handle several monsters without any help. To top it off, Alan discovers that one of his creatures produces a fruit that restores 1,000 magic points. With the team in sync, Alan realizes something important. He's farming experience every day without even needing to be present in the fight. Later on, using that sharing ability, he watches his family from afar, sees his sister training, his dad hard at work, and his mom taking care of the little one. Moved, he leaves a gold coin on their window. From the mansion, he makes a promise. He's going to send more money every month to help out. The Baron gives Zenov the usual thanks for having inspected the mines for 6 months. And as expected, with no humans around, the place turned into a real monster condo. And it doesn't stop at the mines either. The villages that used to refine micro are infested too. The Baron, already wanting to fix the losses, orders that the nearest mine be reclaimed first, and asks how long that's going to take. And Zenov drops the bomb. The delivery deadline's about 3 years. The Baron nearly falls out of his chair and demands they speed things up, while Alan just watches, realizing the noble is in a huge rush to fill his coffers again. Wanting to know about the competition, the Baron asks how things are going in Crane territory. Zenov reveals that things are tense over there. They stirred up the wrath of the White Dragon because they kept mining in its territory, and the result was tragic. The workers were turned to ashes in the blink of an eye. The Baron orders them to keep an eye on everything. Meanwhile, even while running errands around the mansion, Alan keeps gaining experience non-stop. That's because his summons are out in the wild, beating up monsters. The kid's got his plan all mapped out. At 12 years old, he hangs up his servant's apron to become an adventurer. There are only 2 years left, and he plans to join the royal hunt just to thank everyone for what they've done for him. Sometime later, Alan decides to pay a not-so-friendly visit to a goblin village. The creatures freak out and ring the alarm bell, but Alan and his bears come in like a steamroller. He knows that if he leaves these creatures alone, they'll just keep multiplying. The goblins try to make a run for it when they see how tough things are, but they run right into the bears who are already ready for the feast. But out of nowhere, a goblin king shows up trying to throw his weight around. The thing is, he can't last 2 minutes against Alan's summons. When the big guy goes down, Alan is thrilled. He racked up 4,200 experience points just from that little adventure. All in all, the village brought in almost 49,000 points, which is still not enough for the level he wants to reach. But he's already got a plan. He's gonna wipe out every goblin village on the map and then go after the orcs. Time flies, and in March of the new year, Mihai finally comes home, freshly graduated, but looking like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looks at his sister, nostalgically comments that she's already 10 years old, and then turns to Alan, challenging the boy to a duel with everything you've got. Later, out on the training field, Alan feels like his chance for a rematch has finally come. He's powered up with the blessings of the spiders, which give him crazy speed and about 20 seconds of extra brute strength. The fight starts and Alan becomes a blur as he charges at Mihai. The guy is even surprised, but blocks every strike like he can see the future. Alan starts to freak out. How am I this fast and he's still dominating the fight? Then Mihai gets tired of playing around, drops his guard and goes on the offensive, making it clear that his sword technique is on a whole different level. Mihai wins, and Alan is left there regretting that he sacrificed attack for speed. Mihai acknowledges the kid's effort, but quickly cuts the conversation short to talk to his father, who's beaming with pride, seeing that the 3 years at the academy paid off. Cecile, of course, doesn't miss the chance to tease Alan, saying he's not even close to her brother and suggesting he ask for some lessons. Alan actually likes the idea, but Mihai interrupts the mood to give a serious warning to Thomas and Cecile. He's gonna have to disappear for 3 years to fulfill this so-called noble duty. Thomas tries to understand what this duty is, but Mihai keeps it a secret. Cecile is devastated since she thought the family would finally be together, but she can tell from her parents' faces that there's no room for discussion. Mihai asks her not to be sad and promises he'll do everything he can to come back soon. Alan, putting the pieces together, realizes what Carnell meant earlier. The Baron already knew everything, and this talk about a noble duty is starting to smell like trouble. A few days later, Mihai says goodbye and before getting into the carriage, gives Alan a hug and asks him to take good care of Cecile. Alan accepts the bard's request, but he looks thoughtful. He felt Mihai trembling during the hug. Time passes again, and in May, Alan decides it's time to take on an orc village. He's already at level 35 and has cleared the map of goblins over the past few months. He starts the attack, and the orcs show that things are tougher than expected, but Alan uses strategy and manages to break in. The Lebrons hold the line, protecting the boss, but the orcs sound the alarm and a giant horde appears. Alan even gets excited, already imagining the XP feast that's about to happen. As the monsters go down, the experience bar shoots up beautifully, but out of nowhere, a ball of energy flies in his direction. The Lebrons intercept the attack, and when the dust settles, Alan sees 3 orc shamans. The guys start going all out with sorcery, and Alan gets pissed because it's the first time he's seen magic in this world, and of course, it's the monsters using it. He realizes that if he doesn't take down those mages fast, his rearguard is going to get wiped out in no time. He aims one of his iron balls and, with a masterful throw, takes out one of the shamans without much trouble. Seeing that the shamans go down easily, Alan even gets excited, but the joy doesn't last long. As soon as the first one bites the dust, the others take cover and keep spamming their sorcery from a distance. One of them, in fact, bolts off in a panic to warn the Orc King about the invasion. The boss doesn't think twice and mobilizes the entire army. Alan realizes the easy ride is over, and now it's all about a war of attrition. Luckily, he's fully stocked up. He's got enough magic stones to summon about 2,000 bears and fruit to give his mana that extra boost. He orders a full-on attack, and the brawl turns into an all-out war zone. It looked like they were slowly pushing the orcs back, but then the Orc King joins the fray. With a single blow, the beast wipes out 2 of Alan's bears. The kid keeps summoning reinforcements, but the Orc King is a meat grinder, destroying the beasts faster than Alan can click to summon them. Things get ugly. The bronze are wiped out, and the shamans take advantage of the chaos to focus their fire on Alan. He even tries to protect himself with 2 bears as shields, but the impact of the magic is heavy and he really feels it. He uses a life leaf to keep from passing out while frying his brain trying to figure out how to beat this boss without getting obliterated. Just when he was about to accept that the only way out was to hit Alt plus F4 and bail, Sinov shows up out of nowhere, asking if he needs a hand. Alan is startled since the knights weren't supposed to arrive until the next day. Senov explains that he saw the smoke and came to check out what the commotion was about. When Alan awkwardly admits that he wanted to solo the orc village, he remembers that the summons are all out in the open and makes everyone disappear with a snap of his fingers. But Senov doesn't even care. He walks right past the creatures and heads straight for the Orc King, ordering Vice Captain Libran to take care of the rabble. Alan is caught in a mix of feelings. Upset because he missed out on the boss XP, but eager to see the pros in action. The monster goes all out on the attack, but Senov blocks it like he's just swatting a fly. Libran takes the opportunity to spill the gossip. Senanov isn't called the Demon of War for nothing. The guy's fighting style is brutal. While Senov toys with the Orc King, Libran makes an epic leap into the chaos and activates his extra skill. Alan is left speechless. It's exactly like Karina's technique. The move wipes out a horde of orcs and sends another shaman back to the lobby. Seeing that, Alan has an existential crisis. How did I lose to Karina if this skill is so overpowered? Meanwhile, the Orc King makes one last effort against Senov, but the veteran dodges with a huge leap and, with a single clean slash, cuts the king in half. Alan can't believe it. The guy soloed a rank B monster without even using his special skill. Later, back at the camp, Senov decides to lay all his cards on the table. He had already suspected it and asks if it was Alan who cleared out the goblin villages. Alan confirms, and Senov reveals that the knights had been finding monster bodies without magic stones all over the region. Adding that to the fact that Alan tamed a white deer and fought Mahai on equal footing, it was easy to connect the dots. Senov realizes that the boy has a gift with these summoned creatures. Alan doesn't have much to hide, but he also doesn't spill the beans about the god of creation, so he doesn't get himself into trouble. Then Senov drops something Alan wasn't expecting. The Baron already knew everything, which is why they gave the kids so much freedom and let him take the home shift. After that, the veteran proposes a pact. He'll keep his mouth shut about the creatures, as long as Alan keeps him updated on how his hunt is going. In the end, both of their goals are to clear the area. Alan agrees, a bit bummed because he won't be able to steal XP from the knights anymore, but he's left wondering about one thing: how did Senov survive a scar like that? And why doesn't it disappear even after leveling up? 2 weeks go by and Alan is all smiles. Now he solos the orc village with strategy and racks up 335,000 experience points per round. But the RPG vibe ends quickly when royal emissaries arrive at the mansion. At the dinner table, the mood turns heavy. They hand Mahai's diary to the Baron and drop the devastating news: Mahai died fulfilling his noble duty. The Baron explodes with indignation. That wasn't what we agreed on. How did he die in just 6 months? He accuses the royals of sending his son on a suicide mission just because they're low-ranking nobles. The emissary, cold as ice, asks if he should take that as an insult to the royal family, and the Baron is forced to swallow his words in silence. As they leave, Alan remembers Mihai trembling during their farewell. He already knew he wouldn't be coming back. The Baron tells everyone to get lost and stays alone with Cecile. But soon after, the silence of the mansion is shattered by her screams. The girl is possessed. She already figured out that her brother went to his death knowing his fate, and confronts her father, wanting to know if nobility only exists for that, for dying for this damn duty. The Baron is left speechless with no words to comfort his daughter, and Cecile bolts out, running far away from there. Alan just watches his boss in that pitiful state and starts to wonder, isn't there anything that can be done? What kind of bizarre law forces people to accept death like that without even making a sound? Later, at the ranch with Rico, the mood is heavy. The veteran drops another piece of the puzzle. The Baron's parents and even his older brother also kicked the bucket early because of this so-called duty. But dying at 15, that's just too much. Pure cruelty. While the conversation is going on, the whole mansion shakes with a warning scream. Miss Cecile has disappeared from her room. Chaos breaks out. The staff goes into panic mode, running everywhere, and Alan doesn't waste a single second. He rushes out to look for her, bitterly blaming himself for leaving the girl alone at a time like this. His heart is in his throat, and he just hopes Cecile doesn't try anything crazy against her own life. Feel the drama. Cecile is there, sprawled on the ground, completely exhausted after running so much to get away from everything. Alan, who isn't dumb at all, uses one of his summons and finds the girl in no time. When they meet, she immediately asks in a tired voice, "Are you gonna take me back to the mansion again?" But Alan, being honest about being her loyal servant, says he's there to do whatever she tells him. She tells him to scram, but then, grumble, her stomach gives her away. Alan pulls out some bread and fruit from the book. Pretty strategic, right? And she dives right into the food. Then the mood gets heavy. She starts crying while trying to act tough, asking if her brother was strong. Alan confirms it. The guy was such a legend that he never managed to beat him. Cecile breaks down, remembering her brother's letter where he confessed he was terrified and just wanted to come home. Seeing her so desperate, Alan drops the bomb. How about we run away from the city, forget about nobility, and see the world? She's in shock, says it's impossible, but he tells her that at 12 years old, they can become adventurers. She still tries to cling to her duty at the academy, but Alan hits her with a dose of reality. You have a choice, Cecile. What do you want to do? She remembers that her brother, even though he was scared, was there by his own choice. Looking at his brooch, she makes her decision. Let's go back to the mansion. Mithril's plan and the noble's decision. When they arrive, the Baron and the family almost smother the girl with hugs. Her father, all flustered, tells her to relax because Mithril is going to save the day. If he gives the mining rights to the king, she'll be free from this dangerous responsibility. Alan immediately figures out why the Baron is so desperate, but Cecile leveled up her mindset. She tells her father that she's going to fulfill her noble duty, and just like her brother, she's not going to back down. Family pride, right? Time flies, and Alan is unstoppable. Now he's taken down the Orc King and the whole village like he's playing on tutorial mode. With the daily cleanup he and the Knights did, the Granville family's routine goes back to normal. But we all know it was Alan who carried the team on his back. Back at the mansion, he overhears the Baron and Senov relieved because the mining's about to start. Meanwhile, that Carnell guy is just lurking around, which is never a good sign. Alan decides to climb a mountain, something Cecile would never be able to handle, to solve a problem, an ant nest that's right in the way of the mining operation. He estimates there are about 1,000 armored ants inside and a B-rank queen. Since he can't see the inside from afar, he goes full attack mode, summons the whole squad, Fang, Claw, and Fin, and starts the fight at the entrance. And that's when, my friend, the endless grind begins. A whole month goes by and Alan's got dark circles under his eyes that look like panda makeup. The guy took out about 2,000 ants, but it seems like more just keep coming out of the ground. He's racking up XP like crazy, but he's totally wiped out. Another month passes, 5,000 ants down, and still no end in sight. When he finally thinks he's gonna have to live there, the ants stop coming out. Time to use his brain. He sends some hollows to scout the place and starts mapping everything out in his journal. The place is a gigantic maze. One of his Hawkins ends up going to meet the manager in the sky, but Alan doesn't stop until he finds the egg room. By late afternoon, he finally finds the Queen's chamber and goes in with his whole army. The creature's massive. Alan's bears try to clear a path, but the Queen beats him down effortlessly. But Alan has the secret to success. He summons faster than she can kill. A horde of bears latches onto her abdomen, and that's victory. 45,000 XP in the bank. Alan even finds it odd that he only needed 40 bears this time, while for an Orc King he needs 100. Must be the exhaustion from laying so many eggs. The creatures celebrate, but Alan is already thinking about what excuse he'll give at the mansion for being gone all day, so he needed some impressive proof of his feats to come out on top. That's when he spotted the Mithril. The next day, the kid showed up at the mansion carrying nothing less than the Ant Queen's shell, which he got over at the White Dragon mountain range. Everyone was in total disbelief, getting closer to examine it, while Alan thought they could at least pretend and show a little excitement. Cecile, who never holds back, just came right out with it. She told him to come up with a lie that was at least believable. Seeing that no one was buying his story, Alan played his trump card and put the mithril ore he brought from the mountain on the table. That's when the tables turned. Mithril isn't something you just find anywhere, so everyone was stunned, and they immediately sent someone to follow Alan to figure out what was going on. Cecile was left speechless, unable to believe that this time the boy was actually telling the whole truth. Back at the office, Alan explained every single detail about the structure of the cave. With his treasure map in hand, the Baron realized he now had 5 mithril deposits at his disposal. He congratulated Alan for the flawless job and, on top of that, gave the kid the right to 30% of the mining profits. Sebus warned that it would take a while before they saw any commission money, while Alan was still processing the fact that he had just gotten into a huge business deal. Time flew by, and Alan finally turned 12 years old. After a century-long drought, the Granvilles were finally going to start mining mithril again, with a deposit Alan found ready to be exploited the following year. Determined to level up, he decided to have a talk with the Baron that night. But then Rico showed up out of nowhere, all worried, saying that the royal emissary was visiting again. Later on, the emissary shows up together with Carnell. The Baron, suspicious, asked what the purpose of the visit was, and the king's envoy dropped the bomb. The king already knew about the feud between the Carnels and the Granvilles over the Mithril. He handed over a document, and the Baron saw that those guys were proposing joint administration of the White Dragon mountain range. In other words, they wanted to split the profits to avoid trouble. The contract already had the seal of the Deputy Minister of Justice and the signature of Viscount Carnell. Of course that guy was going to sign it. The proposal was perfect for him. The Baron tried to buy some time, saying he needed to discuss the matter in the capital first, which made the envoy furious. The guy thought it was absurd that a mere Baron didn't trust his word. Standing his ground, the Baron didn't budge, saying he wasn't going to make such a big decision in a rush. The envoy stormed out, swearing he'd regret it and accusing the Baron of wanting to monopolize the Mithril. As soon as they left, the Baron exploded with anger. The family waited 100 years to finally make a profit, and now they wanted to force them to split everything. He asked about Zenov, but Seba said he wouldn't be back for another 2 days. The only option was to wait for the master to return so they could head to the capital. With this heavy atmosphere, Alan felt it was going to be a lot harder to say he wanted to quit. At that moment, he overheard the boss and Rico saying that the proposal actually wasn't bad. Alan realized that even though it seemed tempting, Viscount Carnell was not to be trusted and would betray the Baron at the first chance he got. But if the Baron refused, he'd come off as greedy. Suddenly, a scream from Cecil echoed through the house. Alan rushed to a room and came face to face with bandits holding the girl hostage. He charged in without thinking, but the burly guy with the eye patch stopped his attack like it was nothing. Alan realized the guy was tough and switched his blessings to get a strength buff. He attacked again, and seeing that Alan was starting to overpower his partner with brute force, one of the bandits threw down a smokescreen to escape, causing Alan to pass out. For better or worse, they ended up kidnapping the kid along with Cecil. When he woke up, he immediately summoned his choppies to scan the area. He saw that the guys were on their tail. They were in a warehouse, and the supposed leader, a guy named Dagraha, questioned why they had brought 2 kids when the plan was only for 1. The henchman explained that the kid was good with a sword and would fetch a lot of money if he was sold. Dagraha didn't want to hear any excuses, gave his subordinate a scolding, and warned, if the kid causes any trouble, take him out immediately. Dagraha left the scene, and Alan realized that he was on a whole different level, way more dangerous than the others. The bandits started gossiping, asking why the boss had hired that mercenary, hinting that Dagraha wasn't even the real leader there. The guy with the eye patch replied that only he could handle Zenov, although there was a rumor that Dagraha's whole battalion was wiped out because of Zenov, and he only survived because he ran away. Hearing that, Alan wondered if there was some secret war going on, but he didn't have time to waste. He tried to check his inventory and panicked when he saw that his mithril sword was missing. Taking advantage of one of the bandits leaving to go to the bathroom, Alan sent one of his chappies to investigate. He thought he was on a ship, but there was no sea in Granville territory. Looking closer, he saw that the ship was gigantic, and when he peeked out the window, he was completely shocked. They were flying. He started freaking out, thinking about how he was going to escape, trying to stay calm so he could act when they landed. While the chappie was investigating, it ended up catching the royal emissary and Carnell together, overhearing the emissary bragging about how he used his influence to get his hands on the mithril. The royal emissary is there all nervous, thinking that Baron Granville might cause a huge scene in the capital and ruin their scheme. But Carnell, who is no saint, reassures his partner. He already sent a little warning to the Baron not to do anything stupid. And the level of evil here is just insane, you know? If the Baron stands his ground and refuses to sign the contract, the plan is to send him nothing less than one of Cecil's arms as a gift. Alan heard everything and realized things just got way too serious. Right at that moment, Cecil wakes up and the kid realizes his time for just watching is over. Now it's time to kick down the door and start throwing punches. He gave his cards a serious upgrade, focusing entirely on fighting humans, and put his little moth to work, sending the first guard straight to Dreamland. Now that he's unleashed, the counterattack is going to be intense. Alan summons his gear just to distract everyone, and in a flash, knocks them all unconscious. He runs to free Cecil, but Dagra, who's no fool, flies into the room after hearing the commotion. Before Alan could even process what was happening, he took a massive kick to the stomach that made him spit blood. It happened so fast that Alan even wondered if the guy had teleported. The villain, seeing the dumbfounded look on his face, even says, "What, never seen an ability before?" But Alan's a sharp guy. He uses a healing leaf to give himself a quick boost, and before Dagra can get to him, he uses the choppy to mimic the voice of one of the mercenaries. Dagra fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. The moment he turned around, Alan summoned Spidey, who immediately shot out a web to trap the guy, without wasting any time. He grabs Cecile and escapes, using several copies of Braun to close the door. While running, Alan used shared vision and saw that Dagras had already taken down one of the Brauns. In other words, time was running out. He looks out the ship's window and sees the runway down below, about 100 meters high. Alan turns to Cecile and warns her, "Look, the only way is to jump." She tried to complain, but he was already maxing out his resistance and jumped without hesitation. Falling from 100 meters hurts, okay? Alan felt like both his legs were done for, but he quickly used another healing leaf and gave Cecile that "everything's under control" smile. Grumbler also healed the girl, who couldn't hold back and started firing off questions. What were those monsters? How are you so strong? And seriously, are you crazy for jumping off a ship? Alan didn't even answer because he knew Dagras was coming after him, practically foaming at the mouth. He put Cecile on his back and headed for the city, using Halo copies to scout the way. Through the creature's vision, he saw Dagras talking to Viscount Carnell and leaving the ship ready for the hunt. Alan started zigzagging across the rooftops to throw the guy off, since Dagras could only track footprints on the ground. Cecile, not understanding, asked why he didn't just go head-to-head since he was strong. Alan told her straight, "That guy's fighting style doesn't match mine. It'd be tough to win." They managed to reach the edge of the city, and Alan came up with a plan. Head to the White Dragon Mountains to the Grand Bell Outpost. To avoid leaving a trail, he summoned the Brauns and used their shields to propel himself forward like some kind of magical parkour. When they stopped to camp, Cecile confronted him. "You have insane talent. Why did you hide it?" He explained that being famous only brings headaches, and she ended up agreeing. The next morning, Alan took a peek at Dagras through their shared vision. The guy was lost in the city, but started running around in circles. Alan realized right away, if he kept that up, he'd eventually find their trail. The only way was to keep moving through the air with the Brauns. A day and a half later, they arrived at the Grand Bell Outpost. The guards were relieved to see Cecile, but Alan sensed danger and decided to get out of there right away. Dagras had found their trail, and even took care of Hawkins, Alan's lookout beast, which meant the villain had probably figured out his tricks. Desperate, Cecile asked if he was gonna leave her behind to save himself. Alan saw that the poor 12-year-old was falling apart and told her straight, "Relax, I made a promise to Magi that I'd protect you and I'm gonna keep it." But luck just wasn't on their side. In the middle of their escape, Hawkins warned them about another threat. Moldergash, that monster Alan fought 3 years ago, showed up to join the party. Being chased from both sides is pure chaos. Alan left Cecile in a safe place and went all in against the beast. He summoned Spides, the Teddy Squad, to crush the monster, and tried throwing iron balls, but Moldergash was sharp, blocked everything, and steamrolled Alan's summons. The monster jumped in front of him, destroyed the Bronze Army, and grabbed Alan, mercilessly crushing his body. Cecile panicked, but Alan shouted for her not to leave the hiding spot. He was using healing leaves one after another, while the monster had fun torturing him. The beast even took a nasty bite out of Alan, but he took advantage of being so close and stabbed the monster's eye with his dagger. The secret? He had transferred all his health and stamina points to the army at just the right moment. With adrenaline pumping, he drove the dagger through the monster's head. Victory! 82,000 XP in the bank. Cecile ran to him crying, thinking he was dead, but Alan calmed her down. But the break didn't last long. Dagras showed up. Alan was out of weapons and out of energy. He tried to tell Cecile to run, but Dagras was already there, landing that kick to the stomach again. The villain drew his sword to finish the job. But then came the plot twist. Cecile, in a panic, unleashed a spell that caused an explosion. She was shaken, but she didn't back down. Dagris dodged and knocked her down with a blow, but Alan used the moment to taunt him. "I heard you're a coward who ran away from the war just to beat up kids. A total loser." Dagris was furious and started beating Alan up, but Alan just laughed. "Too bad you can't run away now," he said, as Captain C9 appeared on the horizon. Alan had sent Shoppy to get reinforcements earlier, and the timing was perfect. Dagris tried to take on C9, but the captain's defense was out of this world. The guy didn't even move, and the villain's sword couldn't even scratch him. C9 gave an epic speech about honor and unleashed the Aura Blade skill. With a single slash, Dagris was cut in half, along with half the forest. The nightmare was over. Back at the mansion, Alan came clean to the Baron. Viscount Carnell was behind everything, trying to steal the mithril mines and using Cecile as a hostage. The Baron was furious and wanted to go straight to the king, but Alan had a brilliant idea. "Hey Baron, give the mining rights you gave me back to the king. Use that as a bribe to get him to investigate Carnell thoroughly." Alan laid it out. A real man works and protects his family. He doesn't play dirty games. The Baron got the hint, took the advice, and the outcome was intense. Carnell's fief was dissolved and justice was served in what became known as the Grand Bell Incident. After that, Alan and Cecile had a lesson about the duties of nobility. They found out that the world is in chaos because of the Demon King who showed up 112 years ago. 62 years ago, the Great Calamity happened and his army almost wiped everything out. The only hope is the hero Helmes, who appeared not long ago and is holding the line at the front. Alan realized that both the hero and the Demon King are 5-star difficulty, and that he, as a summoner on Hell mode, was put there by the god Elmia to balance things out. The Baron then called Alan for a serious conversation. He wanted to hire Alan as Cecile's bodyguard at the academy, since she would have to do mandatory military service because of her talent. Alan agreed, but on his own terms. Instead of money, he wanted tax exemption for his family and for Krenna's family. He also asked to stop being a servant. The Baron, who already respected the kid a lot, not only agreed, but promoted him to Viscount and gave him a sword, making him an honored guest of the Grand Bell family. Alan finally understood everything. Every boar he hunted, every day as a servant, it all led him here, ready to take on Hell mode. He accepted the mission, is heading to the academy with Cecile, and in the end, he's gonna kick the Demon King's butt. After being away for a long time, Alan finally decides it's time to see his family again. The reunion has that nostalgic vibe, first the siblings and the parents, like a movie scene that warms your heart. At lunch, his mom shares the news that, thanks to the money Alan sent, the family never struggled again. Now they can eat whatever they want. Alan thanks her, but he notices something different. His little sister is there, looking at him with a suspicious face, not even knowing who he is. Their dad explains the situation. The last time they saw each other, she was only 1 year old. Alan feels a bit shaken by this. He spent all this time sending letters, thinking they were super close, but now he realizes that in reality, they were almost strangers. His mom, all worried, starts asking about money. She asks if he's getting into debt or spending money he doesn't have, but Alan reassures them. Relax, Mom, I'm not a servant of the Granville family anymore. Now I'm their guest. And then he drops the bomb. He's going to Academy City. His parents almost fall out of their chairs, so surprised by their son's rise. How is he going to send money from a place like that? Alan pulls out a pouch with 100 gold coins and puts it on the table. They're shocked and try to refuse, but Alan insists it's all right. After all, he still has a nest egg of 600 coins from selling the shells of the armored ants he hunted on White Dragon Mountain. His little brother asks if those were monsters, and Alan, as humble as ever, explains that they were giant ants, plus an entire army of orcs and goblins that he took out all by himself. Basically, the guy turned into a fighting machine. When it's time to leave, that heavy atmosphere settles in again. His little sister finally asks if those letters he sent were real. And when he confirms, she throws herself into his arms, giving him a tight hug. Alan apologizes for not coming sooner, promises that things will get better, and goes on his way. Back at the Granville mansion, Alan is there doing what he does best, being helpful. But Cecile, clearly annoyed, asks what the heck he's still doing there cleaning since he's not a servant anymore. He explains that he just wants to help out until it's time to leave for the academy. Cecile seems a bit irritated, and like any cautious man, he decides not to ask why. A winning strategy, because Cecile herself ends up asking if he's sure he wants to go with her, since he doesn't know anyone anything. Alan, resolute, replies that his job is to protect her. That's when Karina and Dagora arrive at the mansion. Alan introduces everyone, and while Cecile tries to keep up her ladylike demeanor, Karina goes full wild mode and shakes her hand with ridiculous strength. Alan asks if they're ready for the exams, and Karina assures him they've trained hard, but he reminds her there's also a written part. Judging by her face, it's obvious the girl didn't study at all. At lunch, Mr. Granville gives them free rein to eat as much as they want, telling them to make themselves at home. The result? Karina and Dogora devour everything like they haven't seen food in years, leaving Cecile horrified by their lack of manners. Later, while Karina jumps on the bed and Cecile nearly has a meltdown over the lack of etiquette, the others talk about the dungeons and the dangers that lie ahead. Cecile, off to the side, asks Alan if they're not going to tell them about the war. He replies that it's not the right time yet. They deserve a little peace before the storm. Dagora is still a bit lost about the future, but Karina, as a future baroness, already has her fate set: war. 3 days later, the departure is emotional. Staff, adventurers, the Order of Knights, everyone is there to say goodbye. Arriving at Academy City is jaw-dropping, especially for Dogora and Karina, who have never seen anything like it. At Wrath Academy, Cecile explains that about 20,000 candidates try their luck every year. The reception requests the evaluation ceremony, just like the one they did when they were 5 years old. Dagora is up first, and the result is disappointing. Despite all the training, his abilities haven't changed at all. Karina tries to comfort her friends. Then it's Cecile's turn, and she shows off some impressive numbers with an S rank in intelligence. When Karina takes the test, everyone's surprised. The legendary sword lady is there, but she's disappointed too, since her stats haven't gone up at all either. Alan, with his analyst perspective, thinks this is normal. The evaluation only shows potential for growth, not raw effort. When it's Alan's turn, everyone expects a powerhouse. The crystal ball shines brightly, but all his abilities are ranked E, with the title of Summoner. Result, failed for being considered mediocre, Cecile goes off on the receptionist, claiming there's a system error. Alan is frozen in place. He knows the text bug was fixed, but the Hell Mode evolution speed is still there, weighing him down like an anchor. The commotion attracts an elf and a blue-haired boy. Cecile tries to explain that the machine is broken, that Alan defeated the Murdergorse all by himself. The blue-haired boy is surprised, since defeating the Murdergorse at that age is a rare achievement. They reassess the stats and have never seen anything like it. The elf mutters something about Master Hein's prophecy, that someone with all E-rank stats would appear. The elf calls the boy Elmios, and the youngsters find out that he is none other than the hero of humanity. Elmios decides to test Alan and sees that he has absurd intelligence and 1600 mana. Alan realizes the guy is using some kind of appraisal skill and thinks, "Keep your mouth shut, Alan, don't give yourself away." Elmios finds it strange that someone with so much intelligence can't use magic, and Alan, already losing his patience, tells it like it is. Elmios ends up letting Alan take the exam, but with one condition: he has to prove what he's capable of. Cecile gets excited, but Alan shuts her up before she reveals too much. He refuses to show all his cards. After all, he doesn't fully trust the hero. Elmios, curious, accepts the refusal, but insists that Alan watch his own test for comparison. When Elmios takes the test, his stats are insane. Everything is S rank and he's a specialist in physical attacks. He is the hero after all. Alan, to do his part, summoned the simple little mouse. That's enough to pass and get out of there. Later, during the written exams, Karina almost messes everything up, barely passing with a C grade. But what matters is that the group made it in. They decide to rent a huge house, which is common in the Academy City, where groups usually live together. After settling in, Alan gathers everyone for a talk. He reveals their goal, fighting with Cecile to defeat the Demon King. Karina immediately says she's in. Alan expected that. He asks Dagora if he's ready for that kind of burden, since a lot of people don't make it back alive. Dagora, wanting to be more than just a regular knight, accepts the challenge. On the magic notebook, a notification pops up. The group is formed. The name, No Life Gamer. Alan says it's for someone who plays seriously, giving everything to be the best. He feels that in his past life he had to work and couldn't play like that. But there, in that world, he could finally be one. The plan now is to recruit a cleric and focus on farming. Alan reveals the secret. He levels up 100 times slower, so he needs piles and piles of magic stones to make up for it. He's got his eye on a mana recovery ring inside the dungeon. The next day, Professor Karlova shows it up. The guy is the master of the capital's Adventurers Guild, and of course a sword master. He shuts down any talk about nobility. Here, talent matters. Alan drops the formalities with Cecil, who almost strangles him in annoyance. The classes are tough: magic, tactics, combat. Until, on their first day off, they head to Dungeon 205. There, a bizarre Rubik's Cube introduces itself as the dungeon's operating system. The place works like an instance, isolated from other players. Alan thanks the heavens because this way no one will see his secret abilities. He summons Hawkins to map everything out. Alan instructs the group to ignore irrelevant chests and focus on the objective. They encounter the slime, and before it can react, Cecil disintegrates it. Alan feels proud, checks the group's stats, and sees that the team is insane. They move forward like a bulldozer, clearing everything out. Karina reaches level 22, and Degor and Cecil reach level 9. By the end of the first day, they conquer the whole first floor. Alan doesn't stop. Even during classes, he keeps his summons farming. This results in 200 magic stones per day, a milestone that only someone with his dedication and method could achieve. The moment of truth arrives, the final floor. At Fiesel's request, Alan decides to show why he's the brains of the operation. He reveals that he spent 35,000 magic stones on recovery items and maxed out his enhancement skill to level 6. The result? His summons get a 500-point buff in 2 attributes. The rest of the group doesn't understand half the math, but they see the results. Alan's army wipes out the dungeon boss in seconds. They claim victory and a rare sword. At the guild, they move up to rank D. They're beaming, celebrating every achievement, not realizing that there, in the shadows, a strange guy is watching them with a not-so-friendly look. Things are just getting started. Sometime later, in the classroom, everyone finds out that the famous swordmaster Dieberg is going to give a special class next month, and the hero will also be there. Alan doesn't really like the guy and keeps wondering if that blue-haired dude doesn't have anything better to do with his life. At that moment, the teacher announces that during the next 3 months of vacation, they'll have the mission of conquering a dungeon. Whoever fails is out of the academy. The rules are simple: groups of up to 8 people and no outside help. And he lays it out straight. A lot of students don't survive these trials. Right away, everyone starts recruiting to form a strong team, and Alan realized it was just like those classic game chat recruitments. Karina gets flooded with invitations and doesn't know what to do. But Alan already knows the ropes and announces to everyone that they're looking for a talented healer. They reveal that they've already conquered 2 C-rank dungeons and show their adventurer card to prove they're not just talking big. Since the group is small, the profit is bigger for everyone. At that moment, a super shady-looking kid quickly turns his head, clearly interested in the money. Later on, while they're eating, Cecil comments that no one has come to talk to him. Alan thinks the church has already taken the students with healing talent, so all they can do is wait. And it's right at that moment that the suspicious kid, Keel, comes over. He says he's a cleric and wants to know more about the group. Alan gets excited and invites the guy to sit down. Keel admits that he's been avoiding eating during the day, but Alan doesn't buy that diet excuse and pays for a meal. The kid accepts, devours a huge plate, and gets straight to the point. He wants to know how much he can make in the dungeons. Alan replies that each person makes between 20 and 40 silver coins per dungeon. Keel is stunned and asks to try out for the group. Alan agrees right away, and the team pushes more food his way. In Alan's mind, a valuable cleric like this can't slip away. Already in the dungeon, Karina defeats the monster and levels up. Alan explains that in a closed group, when someone defeats a monster, everyone gets experience, and Keel is amazed. On the 3rd day, they reach the boss room. Degorha, Cecil, and Karina charge in, and when the monster tries to focus on Keel, Alan uses a summon to protect the boy. Dogor ends up getting hurt, but Keel heals him without any trouble. The boy says he learned to heal at the church, training non-stop for 2 months when he found out he could earn 10 coins a day. At that moment, the chest appears. They hit the jackpot, a mithril shield, which they later trade at the guild for 15 gold coins. Alan notices that Keel is way more interested in the money than in the school assignment, but he doesn't complain. He invites the boy to live in the house where everyone stays together, but Keel turns him down. He wants the freedom to work with other groups that pay more, because he needs to save up as much money as possible. A month goes by, and Alan is super excited to go train. And it's no wonder he hit his next goal. Now, the Grimoire has 60 slots for cards, and on top of that, he unlocked the Awakening skill. Finally, after almost 3 years, there will be new faces on the summoning list. He goes to the dungeon and summons C-rank creatures: a boar, a shark, a scorpion, a bird, and a guardian. Since the original names aren't any fun, I'm gonna name this crew Pretinia, Dentuco, Kuko, Espeto, Pressa, and Berengela. And there's more. By combining the cards, he creates a spirit, and a little doll appears who can talk. She asks for a name, and Alan calls her Maria. The little one flies off, all happy, passing through the walls. Alan loves it, and even tests awakening on a Demka insect. The creature's stats skyrocket, and it gains the swarm ability, creating a sea of insects throughout the entire dungeon. Maria hates the infestation, and Alan mentally thanks himself for not having done the test inside the house. Sometime later, the students are at the Colosseum waiting for Almios and Dieberg, the swordmaster. With them comes Sylvia, the Lady of the Sword. Karina doesn't waste any time and already wants to know how to learn a skill, saying she wants to become as strong as Alan. Dieberg tells her to attack with everything she's got, focusing her mind on activating the skill. Karina charges in, but the veteran blocks everything with humiliating ease. The whole afternoon goes by like this, and the girl is exhausted. Dieberg suggests she give up, but she stands her ground. When he wants to know why she won't quit, Karina answers that Alan would never give up if he were in her place. His dream is huge, so she needs to work twice as hard. Everyone there is surprised. Then Dieberg gives her the golden advice. Empty your mind of everything, focus only on the skill, and attack with whatever you have left. Almost out of energy, she moves forward. With her mind clear, she strikes, creating a huge shockwave. The master congratulates the girl, who immediately faints from exhaustion. Alan uses a healing item to get her back on her feet. Elmios takes the opportunity to ask what this big dream of Alan's is, but the boy just smiles and says he'll find out once he proves he can be trusted. Later, in the dungeon, Alan introduces Maria as the new bodyguard and even reveals a transport beast to get across everything quickly. Karina tries out her new skill and takes down a flying monster. Shortly after, leaving the guild, the team finally reaches rank C. Alan suggests a feast to celebrate and to officially welcome Keel, but the boy refuses, saying he'd feel bad thinking about his family, who's struggling. Alan then makes an offer. If his family agrees, they can all live in the same house, which has plenty of empty rooms, and get a fair salary. Cecil suggests splitting the profits into 6 parts, and that extra share becomes the salary for Keel's family. In exchange, Keel gives all the magic stones to Alan, who needs them to level up, and Keel, who's no fool, accepts right away. At night, Keel shows up with a bunch of people, but without his parents. His little sister, Nina, introduces herself and thanks them for taking everyone in. Alan even jokes by calling Keel my lord, and the boy quickly asks to just be treated like a normal person. Then Cecile comments that she found it interesting that Keel came from nobility. He comes clean. They were once nobles, but the family lost their titles. Then Dagora blurts out that nobody in there cares about social status. And Alan drops a bomb. Both he and Karina were born as servants. Everyone is shocked. Cecile admits that she really is a noble. The servants stand up and bow, but she asks them to stop, because at the academy, everyone is equal. Keel wants to know her last name. She answers, Grandil. The mood instantly gets heavy. The little sister and the servants stand up with angry looks on their faces. Cecile doesn't understand anything, and Kyo explains that because of her family, his family, the Carnels, was destroyed. His father is Baron Carnelf, and Kyo asks that no one try to make excuses because a royal messenger confirmed that it was all a plot by the Granvilles. Alone in the room, Cecile tells the whole story, from her own kidnapping to being rescued by Alan, including the assassins. Kyo can't believe it. Alan changes the subject and asks how the boy's father treated him. Kyo says he was cared for lovingly only until he was 5 years old. After the evaluation test, the good memories ended. He was separated from his family, sent to another city, living on a tight allowance and without the fancy education of the nobles. At 10 years old, a tutor showed up and he was filled with hope. But in October of last year, the money stopped coming. His little sister showed up with the servants, saying their parents had disappeared and he had to get by working at the church. Near the end of the year, a royal messenger knocked on the door with a promise. If Kyo served 5 years on the battlefield, the king would pardon the crimes and restore the title, making him the new Baron Carnel. Alan understands everything right away. Those damn royal messengers keep manipulating people. Kyo, with his head down, laments what his father did and says he accepts being kicked out of the house, but swears he'll restore the family's honor, even if it means risking his life for 5 years. Alan looks at him and tells it like it is. Now that Kyo has a goal, the 4 of them have theirs too, and they're all in the same boat. And the mortality rate on the front lines is brutal, because half die within 3 years, and surviving all 5 is almost impossible. Cecile adds that her own brother lost his life in just a few months. They need to get a lot stronger, and for that, they need Kyo, because the cleric covers the team's weaknesses. Kyo still tries to dodge, saying he'd be using the team for his own ends, but Alan just shrugs. What matters is fighting for what you believe in. Karina smiles and says that everyone will join forces to become nobles again. Degora adds that they're friends, and Cecile, full of pride, declares she'll be the first Granville to live under the same roof as a Carnell. Alan wraps up by saying Kyo doesn't have to carry all that weight alone. And that's when Kyo, overcome with emotion, breaks down in tears and finally accepts being part of the team. That was the end of the episode. If you made it this far, comment part 3, and I'll give a heart to everyone who comments so I know who the real fans of the channel are. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's coming next is gonna blow your mind. And hey, don't leave without watching this video that's showing up on your screen right now. The drama over there manages to be even worse than the one you just saw. Without further ado, Rebobina says goodbye and see you next time.